All right, good morning, everyone. We are ready to proceed, so I will call the meeting to order. Take a roll call, please.
Member Chaplin,
Here.
Member Covert, Member Dessart,
Here.
Member DeCiani, Member Eckhoff, Member Elliott,
Here.
Member Hart,
Here.
Member Healy, Member Kajewski,
Here.
Member Larson.
Here.
Member Noonan. Member Ozak.
Here.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan.
Here.
Member Rutledge. Member Selman.
Here.
Member Tornatori.
Here.
And Member Zay.
Okay, we do have a quorum. My understanding is we do not have anyone signed up for public comment. Under Chairman's remarks, we have a number of presentations today, including some matters that were brought to us by various board members as ideas that may be ways we can help the public through this crisis, including perhaps some money for the school districts, discussion of CARES funding for an expanded access to seasonal flu vaccines, discussion regarding COVID contingency funds, and then other pending requests. We're going to be proceeding under the rules of the Open Meeting Act that will unfortunately require that we have a roll call on every vote. So to the extent we can combine items and improve them, we'll do so. We don't have a physical quorum here today. So with that, without further ado, we'll move on to the discussion of the Recorder Document Storage Fund. Don Carlson had a few opening remarks.
Good morning. Don Carlson, Chief Information Officer, DuPage County. Just wanted to give you kind of a background and purpose for what we're doing today. Purpose of the presentation that we're going to have today is to present information on proposed price changes to fees due at the time of document recording for the Recorder's Document Storage Fund and the county's Geographic Information System Fund, and present the findings of the 2019 Document Storage Cost Study and 2019 County GIS Cost Study. So my part in this is that the GIS function rolls up to me. We have a large a portion of the recorder's fee, so that's why I'm doing the intro. So with me today, with all of us today, is the consultant Bruce Cowens, who from MGT, who performed the studies, Tony Manzullo, Deputy Recorder, and Tom Ricker, our GIS Manager. Mr. Cowens will present the relative information and cost studies. And just as a point of clarification, any formal vote on anything that we're talking about today would take place at the September 8th Finance and County Board meeting. So there's not a vote today, it's a presentation. So without further ado, Mr. Cowens.
And by the way, while he's stepping up, you all who are not here are missing out. Sheila brought in some deviled eggs today, and you're not going to get any. We're not saving them for you.
If you can hear me better without the mask.
You can take down the mask when you're up there, President.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attention to safety. Do we have the, yes, okay, let's go to the next slide. We're looking at some fees today, and the question is, the fees are around, and in theory, those fees exist to pay certain bills. And so the factual question is, do they? And that's what we're reporting on today. These fees, the prices that you're charging for these have been in place for a really long time. We'll get, well, yeah, once every few decades, whether you need it or not. And so it's a matter of some financial housekeeping to look at them. No one would ever be overjoyed to increase fee prices, but as a matter of some fiscal necessity, I want to present the situation to you for your consideration. There are land records maintained by the county, and these are charges that go as an additive to document recording, which is generally a land transaction. And it says if you are causing changes to the system, you should help pay for the system. Technology costs occur irregularly. They tend to be what you might call lumpy. They're not like the personnel costs, they're stable and predictable. So it has been the policy of the state of Illinois for a long time that these would be paid for by a separate charge, and the revenues would go into special funds to pay for the technology so that the general fund not be faced with irregular and potentially significant expenses. Next slide, please. there are approximately 120,000 transactions, you'll see the actual numbers up there, that are subject to these fees. And if these prices were approved at full cost recovery, that's again a matter for some discussion. We're talking about generating an additional 719,000 a year for the recorder's document storage system and nearly 900,000 for GIS.
You'll have to excuse him. He hasn't been fed yet.
Understood. Food is good. You know, the goal here is to insulate the taxpayers from having to pay for this. These things are necessary. The county has the systems, and by having separate charges for them, the message is people can have as much service as they want, but the fee is there to pay for it. And by having a fee, we take it off of the general fund, and it is a shifting of the cost burden away from taxpayers who, for the large part in any year, don't use it. Next slide, please. Where does your authority to charge come from? It was established in 1989 by a change in state law. It used to be the state would say, here's the prices for X, Y, and Z. This number of counties went to Springfield and said those prices are really old. I saw a 1927 statutes book where the prices were in many cases the same as today, not for technology, but for other charges, meaning, as one client of mine said, I guess if I only adjust my prices every several decades, that might be a problem. So the language of the statute said, here's the price, and it states the price. But if a county does a cost study and the cost study finds that the current price isn't enough to pay the bills, the county is empowered to override the number in the state statute and establish a separate price. Now, that has become a nearly universal practice in Illinois, and I have personally done studies on fees for 92% of the population of Illinois. I've really been up and down the state from Kentucky to Wisconsin, and everybody's doing it because they have to. Next slide, please. One of the questions anyone would have is, am I going to be looking at a headline that says, elected officials chose to do something nobody else would do? And the answer is presented in the slide is no, what we're looking at here is pretty close to what other counties are doing. And you will see you're charging on document storage fee for the recorder, $3, costs $9.67, and the peer average is $10.32. So your cost is really pretty much what everybody else incurs, but your price is not at the level that others have authorized. On the GIS fee, you're charging $15 because, as you see there, you updated that one in July 2005. But it costs you $21.60, which is only 10 cents more than the average of the group. So I would not find that these costs were alarming in any way. They're rather standard for what we would expect in a Northern Illinois county of good size. Next slide, please. Who has to, if you do this, who does it affect? Well, taxpayers in general aren't going to write you thank you notes, but they benefit when costs are put on fees, because that means that's a cost that doesn't have to be put on the tax bill. If you were to approve these fees at full cost recovery, as recommended by the offices, it would add $12 to the cost of a recording, which is currently $54. Another way to look at that in terms of impact is these are mostly on real estate transactions. The median price of a home in DuPage County, I just looked this up, $310,000. And so you would be talking about that house going from $310,000 to $12 more. While I would never be cavalier about any charge, I think they're all important and we want to show restraint. It is virtually impossible for me to imagine that adding $12 to the cost of a home is going to make anybody say, forget it, I'm out. I think that's not credible. Next slide, please. So what we're asking for is your consideration of an adjustment to the prices to take the document storage fund to $10 from $3 and the GIS fund to $20 from $15. If you approve that at your September meeting, there will still need to be a period of time to adjust prices on the website to get the word out. Automated systems need to have the new prices put in so that everything will reconcile. But I think if you do that, that will put you in the neighborhood of so many other counties, basically what everyone else is doing. And whether you're for it or not, I think it really does deserve your consideration. I think it is a reasonable move, and there's ample precedent in other counties for it. That ends my formal remarks. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Member Pachowski.
I don't know why we wait 15, 30 years. I know when we have stuff in the clerk's office, I thought we had a policy review these every 5 years. Where we're at right now with these is where we should have been, because we're right in the middle and we're not even recouping our costs, which is disappointing to the county. So I think this is a smart idea, but I think we ought to review these every 5 years so we know that we're staying ahead of the game, because you're showing me losing $7 on that one, and we're losing 12 on the other one. So, you know, we keep our tax rate flat, we manage our budget very well, and to not look at these sooner, I'm supporting this because it's basically shifting the cost, what the actual cost is. We're not making profit, but it just makes sense to do this. And I hope we would review these every 5 years.
Thank you. I think Member Renahan, did you have your hand up?
Sort of. Thank you for the presentation. Seeing that you do these all over the country, what is the average amount of time between years? I mean, we're looking at 15 years on the GIS and 30 years on the other. What's the norm?
I would recommend about every 5 years, as you said. I think if you do it more often than that, the cost benefit is in there. And it's not just the cost of hiring somebody to look at it, it's your staff time, because I don't come in knowing facts. I bring the methodology, but I have to interview people. So your staff have to spend time talking to me. I wouldn't do it more often than that, but I think every 5 years is a very good interval.
Thank you.
I think, does anybody on the board have a sense that we should not do it every 5 years? So I think that's guidance we can kind of send to the recorder's office. The one thing that I did not see in your presentation, do you have an estimate as to the total revenue that would be generated from these fees on an annual basis?
About $1.5 million.
Okay. $1.5 million that doesn't have to come
That's
out of
additional, you know,
new revenue.
new revenue.
Right.
Yes.
And while we hate to raise fees and we like the fact that our fees are lower than other counties, we also don't want to burden the taxpayers, particularly in the current environment. They've told us in survey after survey that they would rather the money come from fees for services rather than the real estate taxes. Member Reckoff.
I just wondered, we used to be $40. Now it's $54. When did that change?
That has been updated a little more often, and I don't remember the exact year. The state changed recording fees recently with some urging from the title companies to something called a predictable fee. And I think, you know, it's easy to understand why people would want a predictable fee, but that has been done a little more often. I can't tell you the exact year, but I know more often and more recently than these. Pardon? 2 years ago. Okay, good. Thank you. I'm glad you have the memory. Thank you. Yeah.
Member Krajewski. You just muted
Yes, thank you. Did we say our actual cost for the recording was $967?
Let me pull it. That is correct.
So we're going to raise it above our actual cost. The $10 was your recommendation, which means it would be profiting off of that.
Well,
Because the GIS, we weren't going to our actual cost. I would think we wouldn't want to raise it above our actual, but if we throw the extra dollar over to GIS, we're still not recouping our entire cost.
Generally, yes, although the price recommendation is not mine. I was retained to determine what the cost is. I found the cost to be $967.
So when we do $10, we're actually profiting off of that versus recouping our cost.
In theory, yes. Let me, like all consultants, make it a little more complicated. We're using the recent past to predict the near future. Will recordings go up, down, or sideways? We don't know. Can you round a price? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I have sat in these meetings in other Illinois counties and heard state's attorneys tell boards that they're entitled to round the number. But that's not a legal opinion because I'm not a lawyer and I can't give you a legal opinion.
Sure. My understanding was we couldn't necessarily make a profit on these, but I guess I'll let the state's attorney weigh in on that.
Yeah, and in general, I think we would say in terms of concern about profit, historically, it's been quite the opposite. It's been operating at a loss for a long time.
Any further? Mr. Manzullo. Yeah, jump on the mic, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Board members, my name is Tony Manzullo. I'm the Chief Deputy Recorder. The $10 figure, keep in mind, this study was done a year ago. Our recordings have increased. When this study was done, we were somewhere around 107. We're looking at surpassing 120,000 recordings this year. Right now, we are the lowest on the list as far as our peer counties of what we charge for this. Bringing it to $10 it puts us pretty much right at where all of our peer counties are. I don't look at it as a profit. I look at it as easing the burden on the general fund. So even if you go 35 cents above, 30 cents above what the recommended price is, it's not a profit. It's easing the burden or the ask on the general fund. This hasn't been done in 30 years. When will we do it again? Hopefully 5. If the atmosphere is right. So I don't think $10 is too out of the range to ask for this.
We're also losing $1.60 on the other one though. So when you balance the two out, we're still losing $1.30 if we're talking 10 prices. Can you tell me what other fees and costs we need to look at? Because this is alarming to me. That's been 15 and 30 years. Because I know with the clerk's office, we said 5. Is there different costs for memorandums of judgment and other recording costs that you have in your office you can provide me so we could see whether or not those need to be reviewed?
Well, we have a standard recording fee that was passed 2 years ago that raised it from, I think Mr. Eckhoff brought it up, $40 to $54. Okay. There are 5 components that go into the standard predictable recording fee. The general fund component, which is currently at 26, and that was just adjusted 2 years ago. There's the next highest one would be the county GIS, okay, of which the county GIS IT retains 14. The recorder retains $1 of that. If this increase was approved, all of the increase would go toward the county GIS. The recorder at $1 will stay at $1, and it's adequate for that fund. The rental housing support program, which is money we collect and ship down to the state, is $9 per real estate related recording, which encompasses about 90% of all of our recordings.
But where I'm at is we're asking every one of our departments to cut 10%. And I think we're not going to put the burden on the taxpayer, but if there's a reasonable fee that can be increased, which would only make that burden of that 10% a lot easier, I think all our departments should look at this. And this is something we should be looking at as a board to make sure we don't have this situation where we're losing money. We were losing, $7 almost on a filing, and now we have to recoup that, especially with next year's budget being so difficult.
I agree.
Thank you.
Member Krajewski.
Yes, thank you. And again, I totally disagree with that. Anything over your actual cost is a profit. But if we're saying that was done a year ago, we got more recordings, then our actual cost has probably increased. So maybe it is $10 just because everybody else is charging 10 if we're more efficient. But anything over our actual cost is a profit. But again, I think the other gentleman stated that it was a year ago, and you've mentioned we've done more recordings. I just don't know why don't we bring the GIS up another $1 to get it closer to what the actual cost is. We're $1.50 or something below. Why we don't bring that one to getting to our actual, especially if we're not going to review it in 5 more years.
I would think that a recommendation on price would be something that anyone could raise and you could debate. We're bringing you cost findings and some suggestions. It will ultimately be up to you to decide what the price should be.
So let's do it this way. Obviously, this is just a discussion. The recorder will put this together for a vote at the next Finance and County Board meeting. Sense of the committee, would the committee prefer that we go $10 and 21 or 21.50 as opposed to 10 and 20? Who would be in favor of the GIS going to $21 instead of 20? Looks like pretty much the entire committee. So with that, Deputy Recorder, we have yeah, the guidance of the board, we look at 10 and 21 is probably a good numbers to land on there for fully recouping our costs associated with that. So we can relieve the general fund of supplementing that with other revenue. All right, anything further on this item? Seeing and hearing none, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Okay, with that, Nick Kopmeyer is going to give a brief presentation on the current status of our CARES Act allocation. As you can see on your agenda, Jeff Martinovich was going to give this presentation. He had a difficult circumstance over the weekend, losing his home to a fire. We all wish him the very best and his family the very best as they deal with that difficult situation. So Nick's stepping in to give this just an overview for us.
Can you pull up the spreadsheet? I know Jeff would very much rather be here giving you this presentation himself, but unfortunately you guys are stuck with me this morning. So I think everybody received the spreadsheet I sent out for the latest CARES Act allocation yesterday evening. And then I know we put it out there for the members here today. So I'll make it very brief, go through it, and then open up for questions. So the latest spreadsheet you have, which is shown here on the screen, we've updated the CARES Act funding allocation to incorporate all of the approved allocations that this board has approved to date. In addition, at the bottom, we've put all pending or future known allocation requests, so you guys have the full picture in front of you. I'm not saying they're approved, but I just wanted to make sure we accounted for it. So overall, out of $161 million original CARES Act allocation, this board has approved 150 some odd million dollars in allocations, leaving 10.8 million unallocated. And then with what you're voting on today, as well as what we know of in the future that will come before you for consideration, that would be equal another 2.23 million. And to date, just so you know, keeping account, 11.1 million has been expended out the door out of the CARES Act, but there's a lot in the process right now. So we expect a big expenditure over the next probably 2 to 4 weeks. You're going to see a big increase in that because a lot of programs are getting up and running. So real briefly, I'll go through each of the kind of the different buckets in here and some highlights on each one. So the first bucket you see up there are the DuPage County allocations, and that totals 62.1 million in allocation. Large portion of out of this bucket is the IT, and those have been implemented. Don and his team have done a wonderful job in order to keep us going operationally during the COVID crisis. So we made a real push on the IT, and a lot of that's been spent. Elections have also made some key purchases out of here for the November election. I know there's mail sorting machine and some other items. The capital program is well underway. I know Tim Harbaugh and the rest of facilities management, many of the projects will be starting in the next couple of weeks. They've been doing a lot to get that up and running, getting the permits and getting ready. So you'll see a lot of projects around here probably after the holiday. In addition, you'll see at the bottom, we are retaining 10 million in this account for our own operational expenses as we determine the CARES Act expenses we've had with staff. That'll be where the reimbursement comes from, that number. The next bucket, if you go down, the local governmental support allocation, or about 49 million. This encompasses the municipalities, fire districts, townships, and park districts. This board has approved all of the IGAs for the different municipalities and fire districts, and those have been circulated to those entities for approval. Currently, right now, the state's attorney is finishing up the final negotiations for the IGAs for the townships and park districts, and we expect to have those out in the very near future, hopefully next week or two. Yesterday, we conducted a webinar with our consultant, with all the municipalities, to give them some additional guidance. And I know there's still some questions that remain, and we will have additional guidance and additional direction for them. Our goal on all of these is to get that money out the door to our municipalities, townships, fire districts, and our partners out there as quickly as possible. Our next bucket, the business and tourism support allocation of 17.1 million. This has probably been our most active bucket of all of them so far. As you're all aware, we've done 2 separate allocations for small businesses in DuPage County. The ones probably most affected by COVID, totaling 16 million. And with the approval of today's batches, small business grants, DuPage County will have paid out over 6.3 million to 600 different businesses in DuPage County. And I have to say, without the help of the auditor's office, that wouldn't have happened, because I mean, they've really helped us get those out the door and get them done and make sure they're correct. The next bucket on there is our outside agency kind of nonprofit allocation, 7.3 million. This board has approved for them. Community services is definitely taking the lead on this allocation, this bucket of allocation. And they are working overtime to try to accelerate getting that money out the door. It's expected that disbursements from this group will be in front of the county board for consideration, probably starting at the next county board meeting and then proceeding on through, getting it out to the nonprofits out there and getting that done. I am happy that one of the first things that we did, this board decided to do, is the allocation for Metropolitan Family Services, PADS, and Catholic Charities. And those were distributed at the very, very beginning of the CARES Act. So that was great to get that out. The next one is the PPE stockpile allocation of 4.8 million. I know this was a big initiative of the board and a very important one for the residents of DuPage County. Procurement has been working with every department, every elected official across the county to determine their needs and quantities. We're looking to secure a 3-year stockpile. And to date, they've secured over 50 different vendors to bid and submit their qualifications for our PPE needs. So that one's moving forward well. Finally, you can see contingency fund. We're keeping 10 million in that at the direction of the board. And that's for, you know, whatever happens. How long does COVID go on for? How severe does it go on for? Is there something we need for the vaccination efforts? But that's kind of our rainy day fund, and it's there for emergencies. And then finally, so that brings us to the 150 million that's been allocated to date. So that's been approved by this board, and that's what everybody's working off of. What's underneath that line are the pending allocations that are still out there for consideration. So like I said before, we have unallocated expenses of 10.8 million, and 2.23 million is kind of pending now in the future that we know about. Everything we know about, not necessarily even on today's agenda, is on that list right now. So we don't know of anything else. And so if all these are, it's going to leave 8.6 million for other unallocated initiatives that the members would like to move forward on. I know there's some really good initiatives, and I'm sure there will be in the future as well, but 8.6 is kind of that magic number. And real quick, some of the items pending for consideration for allocations. Today, you're going to hear about a $1.5 million request for internet access for based on income based for the school age children who don't have internet out there. And I know members Krajewski and Renahan will probably talk much more about that. We also have 300,000 on today's agenda for DuPage County Flu Shot program that I think members Selman and Larson are going to talk a little bit more, and the health department will be here as well. There is also a $170,000 request for environmental initiatives that member Chaplin will likely talk about, and we'll have our environmental division available for questions as well. We also have 2 future items that are not on today's board. And depending on what the direction of the board, I can either bring those in the future, or if you're comfortable saying, yes, the allocation's fine, we can do it that way too. And we found out these kind of at the last minute, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew all of the numbers out there. We know that ROE, in talking with the Regional Office of Education, they have some COVID expenses, hard COVID expenses within their office. They have not been reimbursed anything out of this, but they need some improvements like laptop computers, scanners, Chromebooks, temperature scanner, and PPE. The initial list that we've gotten is about 156,000, and that's the allocation that would be requested. Clearly, any of the items on this, before it's paid out or reimbursed, would have to go through the auditor's office to make sure they're appropriate for the CARES Act. So that's one that we know about that's hanging out there. Another one is creating jail Zoom rooms for defendants. at a cost of $100,000. I think everybody, all the members, received the Chief Judge's Administrative Order 20-36, I think earlier last week. I think he issued it on August 18th, effective August 24th. So today, basically saying that most of the felony and misdemeanor cases will only proceed via Zoom. Now, we're in good shape over in the courtroom for processing those, but what that means is we can't bring defendants over there to do it. So we need to create the spot where the defendants can do their over in the jail. And so what we're talking about are creation of 5 Zoom rooms. And I know that Don and IT have been working to set that up. So if the board wants to move forward with that, that would be the question.
Does that affect what we've already done over there? Now, are we doing things that we've already paid for that has affected this? I mean, we had to do all this stuff for the courtrooms and all this other, now
So-
we want Zoom rooms. So, I mean, are we going to make up our mind on how we're going to proceed here, or?
So
what are we gonna do?
the courts are set up for Zoom. So we're in good shape with everything that this board has approved. That end of it is set up. It was never anticipated that defendants would never go in there, especially from the jail. So that was we never did the Zoom room. So what we did is not affected. This is just the next step to allow defendants. Obviously, we didn't know about the administrative order that was issued last week.
Well,
So
I mean, is he going to give us any chance? He might give us some heads up on the future, what might be coming down the pipe next time, so we actually know, because we are a campus here and it does affect what he does affects a lot of other people. It seems to be we're hearing about this stuff after the fact, which then puts your people, behind the 8 ball there. Now we're rushing to catch up. It would be nice if we actually worked together here on this campus, just not one
Understood.
group doing whatever they do and then mandating something and then having facilities have to then run around and IT run around and scramble and try to figure out how to do it.
Well, I can tell you with this one right here, we've got IT set up. I mean, their Sound Inc. is going to be in there at about 1 o'clock today. If the allocation is acceptable to the board, we got to move on this because obviously the executive order goes in place today. So they're going to be delaying courts for a while. And I know that the sheriff has been working very well with trying to get this set up to at least do a temporary thing with laptops, things like this, but we need to create Zoom rooms like.
When did you find out about this?
I received the executive order at the same time you did, August 18th.
So no correspondence saying, hey, we need to do this and this is how it's going to affect our setup and this is what we need.
Yeah.
Or what time period.
Yeah.
When can you have this ready for us to go? It's just Lone Ranger, go ahead and do it. And then we got to run around and pick up the pieces.
Yeah, August 18th was the first time I saw it.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm
So-
assuming, by the way, and I don't practice on the criminal side, I'm on the civil side, but I'm assuming this is so that folks in jail can attend court hearings, not necessarily trials, and the trials will still need the larger courtrooms so that the juries can socially distance and so forth. But that way they don't have to constantly be transported back and forth from the jail for their status hearings and things like that. But yeah, I wasn't aware of this.
If we had an executive order working with our facilities, say it goes into effect, next week when we can get Sound Inc. in there and actually approve a contract to do this, not do an executive order and have everything waiting. But what happens if, we know what's going on with IT right now? What happens if there's 2 parts that they can't find that's going to slow this down for 2 weeks or something like that? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense that we don't work together on this.
So
Thank you.
the 2 items that I have, the ROE and the jail, I mean, obviously the jail, we have to move it forward very quickly. So if there's a consensus, we want to move forward, likely it would be under emergency procurement and we'll notify the entire board and let you know. But we had the opportunity I wanted to tell you today. And if you're generally good with this, we'll move forward. The ROE obviously will go through the regular procurement, things like that. I can do a full presentation later on the ROE, but if you're good with the allocation, we can do that as well.
All
So
right, Nick, just because we've got a lot to cover here, let's just do this real quick. You have something before I can present this to me? Okay, so first with respect to the reimbursing the ROE, the Regional Board of Education on their COVID expenses submitted to date. Does anyone have an objection to doing that? Raise your hand if you have an objection to doing that. I see none, I hear none from anybody on the board, so I think we can move forward with that. On the authorizing $100,000 to set up the Zoom rooms and recognizing Member Zay's concerns about not hearing about this before today, but also understanding the Chief Judge's concerns for doing this. Does anyone have an objection to authorizing that expense so that that can be taken care of? Seeing and hearing none, looks like we can move forward with that. Member Pachowski, did you have a comment?
You know, COVID-19 has hit the Hispanic community in a substantial way. District 1 has a significant Hispanic population. Mayor DeSimone sent me an email, if he sent it to you, about getting a COVID-19 bilingual person to get word out in the Hispanic community. Is that something we can look at, Nick? Is there something that needs to be done? Because I think it's a great idea because it's in the Hispanic community, it's getting most of our cases. And I think with this balance that we have, we should address that issue.
I think it's a great idea, and I know that Karen Ayala and the Health Department, they're going to be here at 10 o'clock at County Board. I think they do have bilingual capabilities in Health Department, and I think that's something that we can make a reality.
All right, good. I think that's something with this balance, we ought to look at that community specifically because they've been hit hard and we need to do more outreach with the Hispanic community. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. And I know, all right, real quick, hang on one second, Member Krajewski. I know that we see this additional amount of money that's sitting there. We've talked about the fact that if we have unallocated funds at the end of the year, we may be able to distribute them to the municipalities such as Addison. We may also find out in the next 30 to 60 days that the federal government's going to authorize us to use some of that money for revenue reimbursement, including for the county that's lost $15 to $20 million in sales tax this year. So just keep that in mind as we look to spend on these issues, that there are plenty of ways we can spend it between now and the end of the year. But I do appreciate the very thoughtful ideas that have been brought forth by various members. Member Krajewski, you had a comment?
Real quick, Nick, we talked about this before, the interest, because we haven't paid much of this money out yet, the interest that's accumulating on this money, can we just throw that into the pot?
Yeah, so everybody knows, and I know Auditor Grogan setting up, we do have interest on this, and I think it's in the $40,000 to $50,000 range right now. That will absolutely go back in the CARES Act pot at the end. So whatever is generated will have to be used as part of this.
So on 161 million, it's only 40,000?
So far, I mean, am I wrong? Auditor Grogan saying it may be a little bit higher, but not much.
We thought about buying into the stock market. Yeah, yeah, the interest rates are terrible right now. Okay, any further questions or comments on this? Seeing here, none. Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate the presentation. I wanted you all to have a sense of where we are right now with our expenditures. Moving on with that, now we will talk about the individual CARES Act funding requests, starting with the request that members Krajewski and Renahan brought to our attention, which is a great idea to try to fund internet access for low-income families who otherwise don't have access and whose kids now, per state orders, just got dumped into a system where they have to work from home and may not otherwise have the ability to participate in school. Is there someone individually to present on that, or did Member Renahan or Member Krajewski want to comment on that briefly?
I could comment briefly regarding that, but it came to my attention a couple of weeks ago when our local school district in my district, I sit on a foundation that we raise money for food for low-income kids, and our superintendent, because it was so successful, asked if we could maybe divert some of our money to help hook up the low-income children, since they're going to do a hybrid or remote learning. So I contacted Darlene Rossetti's office, and I know she forwarded a bunch of information to myself and said that Member Renahan was looking at hotspots for a few school districts that had more than 50% low-income children at their school. So Member Renahan and myself and Darlene got on a Zoom call with Mary Keating's office, Don Carlson, Comcast, which has a program that they've run throughout not only Illinois, but a couple other states. A few school districts had already hooked up with Comcast in other parts of the state. And they had a program, was $9.95 a month to hook up families or children and free installation. But the school districts had to commit to like 6 months. I was shocked when Darlene sent over the list. There was 39,000 low-income children. I think I talked to Member Pachowski. He wanted to see the list in his district, and he commented a little earlier regarding the Hispanic, interpreter. So we're looking at a program then to hook up all the children in DuPage that have, of course, they have to qualify through the program that Comcast has, but the school districts know them, the children that qualify. They're trying to get a handle on the total number because there's some that are households. Back in April, some superintendents told me that the families were using mom or dad's cell phone, which wasn't really conducive, but the parents are now back to work. So there's no access for these children, and I think it's a good program. Darlene has had some more conversations with all the superintendents. The state did not provide any funding for their orders, which they keep changing. So they are going to have a remote learning. It is, even if they do a hybrid, they're still going to have to do work from home. So I think it's a good program. I can get some more details if people want it or answer questions. Member Renahan, I don't know if you want to have anything to add.
Yeah, I just want to say, this is something that kind of bubbled up from the superintendents for me, probably June, July, and started having some conversations with community services. At that time, CARES Fund you could not allocate it to home internet. Tom Ricker, GIS, was instrumental for me, kind of like setting the table in terms of where our low income people are and what the overlay is in terms of who doesn't have internet. So we were able to identify where these houses are, where these people are. It's going to allow mom and dad to work from home. It's going to allow kids to have be able to actually do their schoolwork, not try to drive to a library or do it on their mom and dad's cell phone. Thank you, Member Krajewski, for really pushing through, and finding the loophole, because CARES Act did change. And I think we're going to be able to get some good work done and really help families here.
Thank you, Member Zay, then Member Elliott, then Member Pachal.
Yeah, my question, you met with the superintendents. It's almost September. What took so long for this? Because kids have been home since March. And if superintendents weren't thinking about internet access for their students from last March till now, the end of August, and they didn't come up with a plan of a hybrid and a remote learning, what were they waiting for? I mean, these kids were last year having problems. I mean, wouldn't this be part of their planning? That's my question to superintendents. I mean, what took so long? Kids are back. My kid's been back for 2 weeks now. I mean, other kids throughout DuPage have been back for weeks. What took so long, and why wasn't this part of their planning for going back to school in the fall? I mean, I think it's a great plan, but my question to superintendents, what have you been doing? I
think, Jim, I probably could answer. I could probably answer just in a brief conversation with one of the superintendents in my district. It appeared that what they were doing was they were giving these families the information, like you can go to Comcast and they have a program you can sign yourself up for $9.95. So they were giving them the information. They didn't have a plan to fund it. They just said, here you are, family, and if you can't afford the $10 every month and the cost of the taxes, et cetera, would be a little more. But I can't speak for all of them, but I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, these are plans that have been there, Brian. Has anybody talked to AT&T who has the same exact plan? I mean, we're just handing this to Comcast without.
I think part of this proposal was that even $10 a month may be difficult for some families, and it was a supplement to that, working through the Comcast program. But frankly, I agree with you. This is something I'm surprised the schools hadn't addressed earlier in the process.
And great plan, and thank you to Brian and to Julie for coming up with this. But I don't know what the school districts. Obviously, your district's a little different than mine. I mean, I can imagine Hanover Park, Carroll Stream, West Chicago, Warrenville have huge areas that we've got children on these plans, and that these schools didn't look to this. I would think some have, so I would think this number would be down a little bit, but whatever we can do to help. But my question is, what were these schools waiting for?
Okay, we got a bunch of people waiting. Member Elliott.
I think Member Grogan can answer his question because he did raise that concern, or not Member Grogan, Auditor Grogan raised that concern about other vendors. So I think they did reach out to AT&T. I'm not sure they have a program like Comcast, but the way the agreement's going to go to the regional school board and then give it out to the schools, there may be instances, even Comcast doesn't cover the whole county, where they may have to go to a different vendor to hook a child up. So I think they'll have that flexibility.
We have quite a few people who want to speak, and I don't want to just be going back and forth randomly. Auditor Grogan, who, by the way, informed me that it's $70,000 is the current amount of interest that we've earned on the CARES Act dollars. But Auditor Grogan, if you could step up and maybe answer that question, then I'll come back to five or six who want to speak on this subject.
Sure, real quick, relative to the vendor. When this issue was brought up to me
last week, my first issue was, hey, we can't just say there's a vendor, let's build a program. So with working with procurement and finance and the ROE, they went out and solicited other utilities, internet providers, and two of them, Comcast and AT&T, were the ones that really put something forward. We went through an interview process with both of them. So AT&T and Comcast each have their own positives and negatives. My understanding is in lengthy discussions with the ROE, the program will be vendor neutral and it will be up for the school to select either Comcast, AT&T, or another party, or both or multiple ones too, because it may 80% of the low income kids may be covered by one, but you can't get to a certain apartment building because the landlord says I'm only letting these people in. So we have gone to a place where we are vendor neutral, and AT&T, for instance, is more flexible on being able to get into places because it's wireless, whereas Comcast appears to be cheaper per head, per location. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put our thumb on a scale or anything like that for any particular vendor. Per household, per month. And then there's a lot of the difference between the two programs too is who is actually owning the technology that's in the house. So that's going to be up to the school districts to sort of figure out whether they want to have the risk, because they, in the AT&T situation, for instance, they are responsible for, there's some upfront costs for the actual technology, whereas Comcast, it's the homeowner or the household that's responsible for the technology to be returned at the end.
Don't they have a provision where it's a hardship if a family makes $100 a week that they waive that fee for hardship?
This is their hardship program.
$10?
$10 a month, correct.
Okay, thank you, Auditor Grogan. Member Elliott, then member, I think Selman was waiting, then member Desart, then member Ozog, then member DeCiani. We'll go around the room.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this. I guess I just have a couple questions though about the mechanics of how this would work. I do think my impression from talking to some of the superintendents is that different districts handled this differently in the spring and may be handling it differently now. I'm under the impression that U46, for example, and Queen Bee took steps to get this done last spring, maybe some other school districts as well. I don't know whether that was just advising families of these programs or actually subsidizing it in some way out of their budget. I don't know. But my guess is we're going to find a mosaic of school districts that have different things in place already. And they might be quite different from one another. I'm just wondering, sort of, if we approve this amount, which I'm very strongly in favor of, who's going to coordinate with the different school districts to figure out what we pay, what they may have paid already, all that sort of stuff.
And just so everybody knows, this is a discussion item. This is not an authorization. The final program will be submitted to this committee and then the final full county board for formal approval. So this isn't the last word in the subject. Auditor Grogan, I don't know if you.
Here is to do the grant allocation to the ROE, who already has a relationship with the 42 districts under her purview, and that she would be then doing that. And it really is, there is a big recognition that, one school district already has this already all done, so on and so forth, and others are maybe, light years behind. And it is not going to be a one size fits all. And but the ROE should be nimble enough to be able to tailor it to each school district's needs and capacity.
So I guess here's a question I have then. So let's assume you've got two school districts, one that has taken the bull by the horns already and gotten this done and found a way to subsidize it out of their own budget, and another that has done nothing and is sitting around waiting for us or somebody else. Are we going to give grants to both, or would we only give a grant to the second? I mean, the latter doesn't seem equitable to me, because it feels like we would be punishing districts that took this on their own accord and rewarding those that didn't do anything. But that's not an easy question to me.
Right. The preliminary discussion with the ROE is not the moral hazard. Would be to even the district that has already got it. They've figured out how to fund it themselves. As we know, money is fungible. They would not be precluded from getting reimbursed and then thus being able to reallocate monies to someplace else.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
no double dipping. We talked extensively about that. If they've had other grant monies from the feds or the state to do this, that would not then be, they couldn't double dip this reimbursement.
All right, thank you, Member Selman, then Member Desart, then Member Ozog, then Member DeCiani, then Member Hart.
Thank you, Chairman. Similar along the lines, I think, to a point that you made, Member Larson. I wanted to make sure that when we get this sort of final thing to review, that we're looking and making sure if there's starting deposits, which I know Comcast requires in some low-income buildings, can we make sure that those are waived or covered? Because they can sometimes be 3 or months worth of cable payment as your deposit. I also want to make sure we get clarification on that equipment cost, because if you don't turn that equipment again, that can be a surprise $100, $150 bill. And then the other part I want to be really clear before we vote on something is to understand when and if a family would get a bill. If this program is being done so that the ROE is who holds the account, and so there's no liability on the homeowners, I'm bells and whistles excited for this. If there is a way in which a family could in June start seeing a monthly bill or start getting bills for equipment they didn't understand they had to return, I would be very fearful of that, because I can picture my family when I was a child, and that's the sort of thing that would have gotten us into a world of trouble. So those are my questions, and I know we're not making a decision today, so we don't need to follow up on that. But in the final product, those are the things I'd like to see. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And actually, I was advised, I guess we do have a proposal that is on the board. And what we can do is try to address any of the questions we have before we vote on that. And if we have to table it, we will. I think the concern was getting this done because kids are starting school next week. So
to Member Selman's question, at least the Comcast program, there is no deposit for this low income program. The AT&T program, there is it's like $85 upfront cost for the equipment, but then there's forgiveness over a period of time for how long it is. The intention right now is there is still some trying to figure out the actual scope. There's 39,000 low-income children, but obviously there's more than one kid per household, on average, right? So that number comes down. And then there are some that will not sign up for the program. They already have internet access. And so that number starts to come down depending on where that lands. If it comes down low enough, we'd be looking to fund internet access for low-income kids through the school year, which would be basically a 10-month period of time. However, if our estimates on that regard, as the schools start to show it, are way off, that there's many more than we thought, because there's only one kid per household, then we would only be able to fund it, through the end of the year. We have talked to both AT&T and Comcast regarding, it's still a little bit of a negotiation as far as pre-billing us so that we get a bill through the end of the year. I know Comcast was very amenable to it, and AT&T was a little bit less so. So there are hurdles regarding that. But
and I understand our regional superintendent may be on the line and available to address these issues. Arlene,
I think I can answer Member Salmon's question regarding the billing, because Comcast does a contract with the school. So the school is the one that gets billed with every child's name on it.
Okay.
And then the school can add a child next month, somebody moves in, or if somebody moves out and they don't need it anymore out of this county, they would delete it. So Comcast contract is with the school district. They would send them a bill each month, and then that bill would be forwarded to the REO for reimbursement. So the families get no bill.
Great. I would hope that we would apply pressure to AT&T or any other vendor to meet that same requirement. I think the idea of us not knowing and then maybe giving bills to families in January, I think is a nightmare. I think would have been devastating to our family specifically. So I appreciate how much planning is going into this. And I know I think as Member Zay said, trying to catch up on the tail end right before school starts. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
If I can jump in, this is Darlene. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate this conversation. I agree with, Member Krajewski, Member Elliott. The big issue for me here is accountability. So I think that is really important. How will we hold the school districts accountable, for the offering of this, the invoicing of this, all of this? That's going to be my job to do that, to work with the school districts. I do have a worksheet right now that I have sent out to all the school districts, and you're right, it is families, it is not individual students. So we will have a general sense. I asked that to be completed by the end of today, pending this conversation, of course, as well. So I will have a better general sense of what the needs are. To go back to Member Zay's comment about, why has this taken so long? We have been working on it, same thing with me, with superintendents. We started this in April, started to have some conversations. I started with Don Carlson on this. It is a lengthy process. How do we know where the spots are at? We began talking about hot spots originally. It morphed into something bigger than that in conversations with our superintendents. But every district in a lot of ways, is different. Some have money for this. It is an equity issue in a lot of ways. Some have funding for this. Some don't have funding for this. Some don't have Chromebooks to send home with their kids. So there is a lot that's going on in this arena. So it really is all over the board with this. And I think what Brian and Julie were truly trying to do is just like, how can we make sure that if there are funds available, that we make sure that those kids that are the most in need of, to have access to, so they can continue their education, have it. Some are funding, some are currently funding it, as I said, some are trying to look for ways to get the project, funded. They've been working with this with their budget. So I don't know if that answers any of your questions, but for us, I think it's a big equity issue. We want to make sure that every child has, what they need, the tools that they need to get their education.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work, Superintendent. We appreciate it. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention. I know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. I do think there are some concerns, but you raise an important point about equity issues. There are areas in my district and other people's districts where there are financial constraints, and that's kind of the whole point of this. But with that, we've got a few more people wanting to speak. Member Ozog, then Member Desart, then Member DeCiani, then Member Hart. You're still on mute, Mary.
Member Desart was before me. Go ahead.
Okay, Member Desart.
Thank you, Member Ozog. I appreciate that. First of all, I'd like to commend Members Renahan and Krajewski for initiating this program. I think it's just excellent. And the question I had when I raised my hand like an hour and a half ago, I'm just joking. I think that Auditor Grogan and Superintendent Rossetti already kind of danced around. My question was, out of the, if it's $9.95 per household, and there are 39,000 disadvantaged children in the county. My question was, how many families is that? How many families does that equal? And I think they both let me know now that they don't know. They'll know later today, maybe. But that was my question. I think it was answered, that we don't know how many families that impacts.
I can give this, Darlene, again. I can give you a rough estimate. It's probably about 10,000 families.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Member Ozog.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thanks also to Member Renahan and Member Krajewski. I really think this is a really important issue or initiative. I need to ask a question of Ms. Rossetti, though. You think did you say 10,000 families are without internet? Is that the estimate?
Yes, without stable internet connectivity, okay. Yes.
Okay, and that's district or countywide. I need to, as you all know, I was the vice president of the Glenbard High School Board for 8 years. And during my time there, we went to a one-to-one Chromebook, iPad situation. So all of our students are equipped with the hardware. The software the internet connection is an ongoing problem. And I can assure you that the schools have been addressing it. And I need to object to what I sense is sort of a punitive, what the heck have the schools been doing situation. And I think we all need to remember this in almost anything we're talking about today and going forward. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and our schools, and I know this from discussions with my former colleagues, are dealing with incredibly difficult staffing issues. They're dealing with building modifications with the hope that they'll be going back in some form in the near future. They just don't have, this is unprecedented, and God willing, they'll never be facing anything like this, but I cannot tell you how full their plates are. So the inference that they're not doing their job is offensive to me, especially as a former school board member. And I think we really need to go forward with this, because I do know that this is a problem, and it's a consideration that certainly in the Glenbard schools we were looking at years ago. And we need to think about that in terms of how we all work together versus what have they been doing. Thank you.
Where was I? Member DeCiani, then Member Hart, then Member Zay. And then Member Chapman.
First of all, I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a great plan. I commend members Krajewski and members Renahan for bringing this to us. I think one of the challenges many of our districts had planned to go back in person, as the CDC and Fauci and most of the medical associations recommended. The pros of being in school outweigh the cons of the challenges of dealing with the pandemic. But if you read the reports, it's pretty compelling. Kids should be back in. But at the end of the day, a lot of the unions have flexed their muscles and said, no, we're not coming in. And that's caused a lot of districts, including Elmhurst, to have to change gears last minute. So 2 weeks ago, Elmhurst was going to be back in person. And then literally within a week, the union said, no, we're not coming. So we have to do a modified program. So I think that's one of the challenges. A lot of these superintendents, I think, had good intentions of trying to bring their kids back in. And then we've had some challenges with unions, and we're working through those issues. Unfortunately, the governor has deemed these people non-essential, which is kind of interesting when bus drivers and grocery store workers, et cetera, are all essential workers. We're essential workers. So anyway, but these are some of the curveballs I think that we're throwing at us last minute, and we're trying to do the best we can what we have. I fully support it, and but I think it's just a little clarification on the superintendent issues. I think a lot of them were geared ready to go back in. So thank you.
Okay, Member Hart, then Member Zay, and hopefully we can wrap this up and get a vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, no, Member Selman actually asked my question about the billing, so thank you to her and to all of you for the answer. I also want to offer my support for this program and thank members Krajewski and Renahan. I think this is a great idea. We heard about it being an equity issue, but I think it was Member Renahan that mentioned this will allow a lot of parents to work from home. So this is also an economic issue, and I look forward to voting on this program and seeing it implemented. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Zay.
Yeah, you know, I do still have a student in school in District 87. So, you know, I know what they're going through. I know it's difficult. I want my son to be at school, but it bothers me when Glenbard North got a new football field put in this year, turf, new baseball field, redid the parking lot. I thought maybe some of that could be used towards, you know, making sure the kids can go back and get those rooms, you know, COVID ready. But again, I support the program. I'm just wondering, you know, why it just took so long. I know you said you've been working on it, but it seems like the schools have been pushing our staff for the money right away. And I do remind everybody that 75 to 80% of our property taxes go to the school districts. And while the teachers are at home, and I would assume there's no busing and there's no other stuff, they do have a reduction in some of their expenses. But again, if we could help, that's good. But again, if we need to hook up 10,000 people, 10,000 households, it's going to take a while. It's going to take probably a couple months. So I just wish we were having this discussion in July and not here at the end of August.
Okay, thank you. Member Chaplin, I'll also just note for people who want to read ahead on the agenda, it's 10L, if you didn't see it, is the resolution. So you can look at that. Member Chaplin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chairman. I just wanted to also voice my support for this program. I think it's going to be a great benefit to the children that are home and the parents that are working from home. And I know, you know, like every other entity around, the schools have been struggling so hard with the issue of whether or not to go back to school. And, you know, just to put another perspective on it, having a child that had Kawasaki disease, and we know that this illness does affect some children post-COVID, I think that the schools made the right decision on you know, keeping the kids home, because it's kind of playing Russian roulette with what child's going to get sick, what child's going to get seriously ill, and what child's going to have, you know, permanent damage. So I think this is a great program, and I'm totally supportive of it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak. Okay, we've got a lot of other things to cover, so thank you very much on that one. The next issue is going to be a discussion of the possible CARES funding for expanded access to seasonal influenza vaccinations. This is something that Member Selman brought to my attention. I discussed with Member Tornatori, who's the president of the Board of Health, and we kind of talked with the various entities. The Board of Health's been great. The Human Services Department's been great. Impact DuPage and the DuPage Health Coalition have been fantastic in assisting those issues. Member Selman, did you have a comment on this? This was your original idea.
Yeah, just very briefly, this sort of harkens back to the flattening the curve idea we had when this pandemic first hit. The CDC and doctors are anticipating we'll have sort of another spike as there's still ongoing COVID issues, but as the normal seasonal flu arrives. Every year, and those of you who either have worked in healthcare or have family in healthcare know hospitals are incredibly busy during flu season and often have visitor restrictions. So we want to make sure we can do everything we can to reduce the need for the hospitals. And one area we can do that is by increasing the flu vaccines. And the one complication this year is with more unemployment and with many people getting their insurance through their employer, there's just a lot more families that are uninsured for this upcoming flu season. So some of this funding would help people who can't go see a doctor normally or uninsured, go get the influenza vaccine they need. And it sounds like we're gonna be able to partner with some vendors to make that pretty easy for people. And then hopefully we'll keep some families a little healthier and then also help our hospitals throughout the flu season.
Yeah, so just briefly, because I've met with some of the folks to discuss this issue after Member Selman brought it to our attention. The flu vaccines, as you know, can be accessed at various drugstores and so forth, but they cost $25 usually, and that can be a strain for people. We want as many people as possible, and we're going to have a public education campaign on this issue, because every flu case that you see is somebody's going to go to their doctor thinking they have COVID, and it's going to strain the system further. So to the extent that we can address that up front, we're going to do it. So when we talked about how best to do that, we looked at vouchers for those who didn't have it. We identified approximately 10,000 people who may need them, which is where we came up with a cost of about $250,000 at $25 per, plus built in some money for administration of the program. The Board of Health and the DuPage Health Coalition have been working and meeting with folks at Walgreens, CVS, and different places, Jewel Osco and so forth, to make sure that they can handle these programs. We're looking at ways to maybe have a QR code that this can be distributed electronically rather than having somebody have to physically pick up a chip to go take their vaccine somewhere. Make it easier on people to the extent possible. So we're moving forward pretty expeditiously with that. We want to get ahead of this as best we can. Member Chaplin, you had a question?
Yeah, I think you might have answered it, but you mentioned that you're going to have a campaign. Because, we have a lot of anti-vaxxers out there, and I'm concerned that, people are going to, they're not getting vaccinated for the flu. So that was going to be my question. Are we, going to promote this, encourage people to get flu shot because it's so important, but, we do have that anti-vaxxer movement out there. So I think that's an important component to go along with this.
Yeah, the Board of Health every year promotes this, and they'll continue to do so and probably tie it in. And hopefully, maybe we'll get a vaccine for the COVID-19. Maybe we won't, but it's certainly going to be promoted as part of the regular campaign that the Board of Health has every year, but with added encouragement, tying it into how it can help us address the COVID-19.
Thank you.
Any further questions or discussions on this one? Seeing and hearing none, just a sense of the board on this, because we do have to finalize the program. Is there anyone who objects to authorizing up to $300,000 to administer the program? Members, you had a comment?
Question. Sure, for $45 million going to the Board of Health today?
No.
Wouldn't this be covered under some of this federal money that you're getting at this point?
That's not a budget transfer. What that is we have authorized
allocation. Sorry.
And that I asked those questions. People saw that as well. And the first thing I said is, wait a minute, we're allocating $45 million, which is why I had it rephrased as amending the appropriation ordinance for the Board of Health. It is their spending cap, which includes the money that we've authorized under the CARES Act, as well as some federal grants that they've either received or hope to receive, as well as $10 million more for a vaccination program that we may or may not do in the fall. So this amendment to the ordinance, and we can discuss it further if we want when we get there, is not actually transferring. And that was the first thing I said. And I know I bugged Nick and everybody else when I saw that. This is not authorizing the transfer of that money to the board. They're just raising their spending cap, which we have to do as a board because we set their appropriation level.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, anybody else have any objections or concerns with authorizing this program? Seeing and hearing none, thank you on that one. Then we next have a discussion regarding recommendation for use of COVID contingency funds to support environmental projects in the amount of $170,000. Member Chaplin, do you want to briefly introduce this? This came out of your committee.
Sure. Thank you so much, Chairman. Well, I want to thank Member Krajewski for bringing up the idea of having the household hazardous waste collection, an additional one this year. You know, as we know, people that were staying home, they did a lot of cleaning out of their homes. And the household hazardous waste facility was closed for a portion of the early part of COVID. And, you know, they run from Saturday and Sunday till 9 from 2. They do not accept latex paint. And, you know, we thought that, you know, having a big event, a household hazardous waste event, to allow people to, you know, drop off some of their items and their paint would be a good use of the COVID money. And then we also had come up with a campaign, a marketing campaign or a public service campaign on how to properly dispose of PPE, because it's, you know, we see it everywhere. It's not recyclable. So we really need to educate people on how to properly dispose of their PPE. So those were two initiatives that we had come up with. And Member Krajewski, if you have any comments about the household hazardous waste event.
Well, thanks, Member Chaplin. And again, I thank our auditor who worked on that to make sure it was COVID related. But the Naperville facility, which is at capacity, we've had some discussions about that in the past. They can't handle any more to begin with. And when they were shut down for weeks, that just means our residents in DuPage were accumulating this hazardous stuff at their house. And so to offer an event to be able to get some of this out of their homes and dispose of properly, I think is good. Joy did a phenomenal job and staff to, you know, put this whole thing together. So I want to thank her for that. Thank you.
Okay, Member Healy, keep in mind, we've got two big budget presentations today.
About this, could someone once again explain to me how this is COVID related? Just briefly. I was
Is
listening
anyone from
in.
Environmental available to just address that, or if not, then Nick.
Our auditor probably could.
Yep, yeah, Auditor Grogan could, because we did check with the auditor on that to make sure it was a COVID expense.
Because the way the recycling contract works, the closed days could not be made up because of their capping the volume and such, is my understanding of it. And so since they missed, you know, was it 6 weeks to 8 weeks? They missed 8 weeks of time for people to be able to contribute, to put things in, not contribute, but to bring the things in for recycling. And that, according to our contract, as stated, can't be made up. It's determined that this is because of COVID. We need to get some extra capacity to do some recycling.
Really?
And I will say, as with almost all the COVID stuff, we have a scale of risk as far as compliance to the COVID, the very gray rules that Treasury has given us. I would not say that this is as clear as PPE, but I would say it is more clear than other things that have come forward. So it's all a matter of risk as to what we do. But I think it's better than even. It's a fairly decent argument that we can make that it's COVID for this event.
Okay, thank you. Just to move the process forward, does anybody have an objection to funding this program? Seeing and hearing none, it looks like we don't have any objections, so we can move forward with that. The last thing, and I don't know, Nick, are you talking on this on other pending? Okay, great. So with that, then we will move on to our budget presentations. We start with the Regional Office of Education.
Hi, it's Darlene Rossetti. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning and to present our budget to you this morning as well. Next slide. We are in the people business, like all of you, and all roads lead to our children. So everything that we do always has the lens of what's in the best interest of the children of DuPage County. So whether we're supporting with doing professional development, so the smarter our teachers get, the smarter our kids get, or whether we're, hosting network groups, or we're providing trauma-informed training, all roads ultimately lead to supporting our children and making sure that they get the highest quality of education in DuPage County. Next slide, please. So I'd like to familiarize you, or refamiliarize you with the role of the Regional Office of Education. We really are more than anything the undergirding of our county schools. We're there to strengthen them. We're there to shore them up in any way that we can. And certainly during this pandemic, it has been very challenging times. And we have worked regularly since March. We have met twice a week with our superintendents. I have to give a big shout out to Karen Ayala and her team. She has met with us as well too, helping to support our schools, trying to bring consistency. It has been extremely challenging times. Information changes almost daily. We wait for information to make better decisions on behalf of our children. But that's been a really important role that we have been playing, is to help to shore up and to strengthen our schools, especially during this time in this pandemic. So I just want to share with you a couple of things that, are a major role in some of the things that we do. Next slide. We are more than anything a shared service. We provide the ultimate shared services for the education system here in DuPage County. We do this in a variety of different kind of ways. We network. We actually have 16 network groups that we bring together. Obviously, right now, with technology, our school nurses network group, we have an early childhood program that we meet with folks that provide services out there to our schools. The school nurses group right now, when Karen Ayala had asked, do we have a network and emails for a point person in every one of the 42 school districts in DuPage County with their school nurses, so she could better communicate with one person at that local district, we had that ready and available. They work together, they share their resources together countywide. We do group purchasing together countywide based on the needs of our various groups that we have. We share our best practices together as well. So networking and our constant communication with our school districts and working together with them has proved to be a cost saving for our school districts overall. Continuing education is a big part of what we do at the Regional Office of Education, providing relicensure opportunities for all of our educators. 11,000 educators in DuPage County that are currently working in our public schools. We do that on a regular basis, providing both on-site services in schools, in school districts, as well as professional development opportunities. And this is a huge cost saving to our schools. Gone are the days, 10 years ago when we were bringing in consultants for $10,000, $15,000 that was working in one school district. Pretty much the Regional Office of Education has assumed a lot of those responsibilities in a much, much more cost-effective way for our schools. We do group purchasing. Certainly this was very much evidence. We worked very strongly during this pandemic right now with Murray Snow and trying to do group purchasing for our schools particularly in the way of PPE. We do this in a lot of other ways, purchasing of big items, as well too. If we can get a license, better costs on licensing when everyone is updating, their software and things like that. Those are some of the other opportunities. And also too, we do a lot of grant writing, and our grant writing then brings all of our 42 school districts together to benefit all 42 school districts. So there's less competition, as well. So big part of what we do is really try to consolidate what is needed in the school districts, bring it to our office, and then do it once and share it back with all of our schools in DuPage County. Next slide, please. One of the things that we have been doing for the last couple of years, and really proud to say we have a DuPage County ROE YouTube channel. I hope you would visit it. You can just see, you can just type in ROE YouTube. We've done a lot of work, particularly it's been ratcheted up in the last 6 months and really trying to address a lot of issues that have, that are in our community, that are around this COVID and everything that's going on with our families and other members of our community, with our parents. Everyone is struggling during this time. And so we have brought in people from all over the world to do, all over the nation, I should say, experts, to talk about, how can we better work when our children are starting in this fall? How can we better address, the racial controversies that have been brought forward, other equity issues that have been brought forward? How can we work together as a system here in DuPage County to address this? And we've offered those. One in particular was done in collaboration with the McCormick Foundation. And it was, how do we have conversations with our children? Another very important topic is the COVID issues. A lot of trauma, and as you all are aware of, amongst our families and community members and parents, as well as with teachers. How do we address trauma? How do we talk about our own mental health if we're to be there for children? So we offered a lot of these opportunities virtually to our schools. Social emotional learning, one of the most important things when we're starting school, whether it's remotely or in person, is to how are we going to best connect to our kids? And so brought in experts on that. This was all done, free. Actually, all of our presenters came in and, at no charge to us. And then we offered all of these to our communities as no charge as well. It's the time and actually, and the resources of my staff that, pulled a lot of this together. And the last one on here, compiling and communicating best teaching practices. We've been doing this all along, is, if you have a great lesson, and then we would be sharing it on our YouTube channel. But now we're compiling great lessons virtually and how we can do those great lessons from a remote platform. So this is a very well attended and, very well used opportunity that we work within every day. And it certainly has expanded during this time. Next slide, please. One of the things that we're most noted for is our licensure, our customer service to our customer service to our education professionals in general. Just this past year, and we're on the school calendar, which starts July 1st and ends June 30th. So we renewed 8,000 teaching licenses. We had over 40,000, and one could say, can't they do this online? Sure, they can do it online. But we had 40,000 phone calls and emails that asked questions about how to do things online, and we walk them through and help them. We do have a customer service survey that we ask all of our customers to fill out, and we drive them to a link that they can provide us with how well we are doing. And I'm very proud to say that over the last year, we have received 4.8 out of a 5-point scale, and with 5 being the highest, rating that we can get. Most of the comments are things like why we didn't get perhaps all 5s is, little logistical things that we have control over, is that they had to ride around the parking lot for a while because they couldn't find a place to park. But I can live with things like that. We did provide over 2,000 individual criminal background checks in the last year. We are the major criminal background check provider for our school districts, so they can go to their local police department. They do come to our office. We do charge them cost recovery, on that. We were available all during COVID. We are still available even when, we were pretty much on a remote platform. We still provided this. If there was a needed person in one of our schools that had to get in there right away, we made sure that we were available for them as well. You may have all heard that there's a shortage of substitute teachers. We provided a training to 500 possible substitute teachers, talking to them about what that role would be. And out of that, we at least had another additional 150 that did become substitute teachers. We just hosted one just last week, another one. So we're hopeful to get more substitutes out of that. And then just in the way of relicensure, we did provide at least 200 on-site PD that's in our 505 building last year. And then we were in school districts 82 times in providing technical assistance on a variety of topics. Whatever the need may be, we work very hard to make sure that we're meeting their needs. Next slide, please. One of the most important things that I'm extremely proud of is the work that we do with our high-risk population groups, with our dropouts. First and foremost, we work very closely with our schools, helping them provide strategies so that we don't have any dropouts in our schools. Unfortunately, though, we do. And we do assist those students in getting them their high school equivalency, which formerly was called the GED. We provide career training to those students as well, to make sure that they're on a road and a path to being successful in either in college or in a career. Our truancy services, I'm proud to say, we have the lowest rate of truancy in the state of Illinois, something very proud of. We have 2 staff members that are funded through the Regional Office of Education and through the county, and they provide invaluable services, do counseling to parents. They are turned over to us, students and families, when the school districts can no longer provide any type of additional support or services. They've maxed out anything. We come in with a variety of other type of services to help to support them. And as I said, as a result, we have the lowest truancy rate in the entire state of Illinois. Our Partners for Success program, I'd love if any of you would come and visit that. It is in Addison. It is in lieu of expulsion that students are sent there. And again, we are to provide them with education and also with our behavior interventionists, help to get them back successfully into a road, where they can be successful back in school. And this year, more importantly than ever, we provide mental health services, restorative circles, practices, whatever we can in that arena, a lot of training, and also too in the area of trauma. So this is, again, many of these services are for our schools, for our educators, but they directly impact the quality of our services to our young people. I didn't add homeless on this. We're seeing an increase in our homeless population. And one of the things that we do is we help support our homeless population in getting them into schools, or helping and assisting them with transportation so that they can get, to their school in a timely manner. Overall, outside of services and support, next slide, please. We do provide compliance and oversight to all of our 42 school districts, 260 schools, 65 private schools and cooperatives here. We do provide bus driver training. Every bus driver in the state of Illinois has to be retrained every single year. We provide that service. We went virtually this year to make sure that they were all in compliance. We've had a number of procedures and compliance issues that have not been waived. This is certainly exemplified in the next bullet point with our health, life, safety procedures and protocols. We still have to do our safety drills. We still have to do our lockdowns. We still have to do all the things that we are required to do in the way of safety, whether our children are in school or whether they're out of school. These things will still be required, this year. And we help our schools to make sure that they're providing these opportunities and work with them on providing the best practices. I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of grant writing, both at the federal level and the state level that assist all of our school districts in DuPage County. It is part of our compliance and oversight to provide these services and support. We do I would say, a pretty good job. We've brought in the last couple of years about $25 million in federal and state dollars that support our schools. Our finance department, and I'm proud to say that we are audited by the Auditor General. And for the last 6 years in a row, or 7 years, and my finance person is on this call with us, we have had 0 findings. And so we do not hire our own auditing firm. So I'm very proud of this as well. And our finance department here provides technical support to our schools. If there's new people, and when it comes to, annual financial reviews and treasurer bonds, things like that, we make sure that proper procedures and protocols are followed before we approve of anything. And overall, under compliance and oversight, what we do is basically we provide for district accreditation. So every school, and even the private schools we work with, so they can receive their accreditation. Why is accreditation important? That is how they get their state dollars. We've done a lot of work this year on school calendars. school calendars was certainly a big challenge this year. And how did we get a lot of training and retraining with folks like, here's what you need to do to get that calendar approved. Emergency days are very different than remote learning days. And so it was certainly a fun time and a challenging time as well in this particular arena. Next slide. What I'd like to do right now, if I can, if Jeremy Dotson, Dr. Jeremy Dotson is my Chief Financial Officer for the Regional Office of Education. And as I said, the last 7 years in a row, we have had 0 findings from the Auditor General. And believe me, they can stay with me for at least a year, to keep digging and digging. And we welcome that opportunity. So we work very frugally, very efficiently to get a lot of services in place, and we do that to the very best, the very highest of quality. So Jeremy, are you on the line? Would you like to talk a little bit about this slide and the next couple of slides? So I'm not hearing Jeremy, so I can go through this very quickly. And then open up to any questions.
Dr. Rossetti?
Yes.
I apologize, I was on mute.
Oh, okay. All right, Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you very much for that announcement.
Okay, so you can back up just real quickly with the first slide. I do want to let you know, part of what we do is we don't have a huge staff. We have 13 staff headcount that provide our services and support. So Jeremy, go ahead. I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rossetti. The DuPage Regional Office relies heavily on staff and their productivity to accomplish and achieve most of the great programs and initiatives in education that goes on around DuPage County. And we do that with a unique group of staff, and those members consist of 13 staff members that are in the office and 4 part-timers, 4 part-time assistant superintendent of life safety officers that consist of 0.25 FTEs each, which is basically 1 headcount, and then our assistant regional superintendent, which is 0.1 FTE. Next slide, please. So our organization is a service-based organization. So our budget is predominantly service-driven, and that consists of $839,843. 95% of this budget is service-based, so it's driven by people. So 76% of this budget is payroll and salaries. And the other portion of this budget consists of professional services, which is $162,000, which is basically our consultants, our equity, our mental health, our human resources consultants that do work for us. And they're also staff-based. So 5% of this budget is basically supplies, capital outlay, travel, materials, and so forth. Next slide, please. So the proposed budget, which is on the table today, is $839,843. A 10% cut to this budget will bring us down to $755,000, which will cost us to eliminate 2 FTEs. A 20% cut to this budget will bring us down to $671,000, and that will cost us to eliminate 4 FTEs. 30% cut to this budget would be detrimental to our services, as well as a 20% cut, and a 10% cut would be detrimental. But a 30% cut to this budget will bring us down to eliminate 8 FTEs from this budget. And that will be detrimental to all the services that we offer and all the things that we're doing within the DuPage County community. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing is that we seek no reductions to this funding level that we have that is being presented to you, which is $839,843. And we hope to continue the good things that we're doing within the community with the truancy, with the mental health, with the equity and excellence, and some of the health, the mental health and other services that we offer within the community.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I recognize the fact that you hear this from everyone in your budget presentations, but we are very hopeful that you could see any type of a hit would hit. We're not a big staff, but we take our responsibilities very seriously. We have a volume of responsibilities, as you can see, especially during this time as well. We're very proud to be entrusted with all of these responsibilities. And, we take great pride too as well in providing, in making sure that DuPage County and our education system is the best, not only in Illinois, but in the best in the entire country, as well. We deem ourselves as a very integral part of all of that, and honored to do the work, and just, appreciative of everything that you have done. And I'm open to questions.
Member Ozak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you, Dr. Rossetti, for your presentation. This was very well, good information. My only question for you, though, is at the moment, you say 13 with a 14th head count. Is there any open positions right now, any vacancies in your department?
We do not.
No. Okay, thank you.
There are not.
Okay, thank you.
Burchowski.
Importance of education. Oh, sorry.
You got it.
We spoke earlier today about the importance of education and how important it is to get laptops and everything else. And now we're talking about cutting your budget. It's really just doesn't make sense. It's really difficult when you want to live in a area that has good schools, safe neighborhoods, and police protection and good court systems. And it'd be devastating for you to lose 2 with your head count. Instead of losing 2, would you consider maybe reduction of all staff? Because it seems to me you're already overburdened anyway, and hope to God we don't have to do a 10% cut. But do you have any alternative to getting rid of 2 people in your under your budget?
Thank you, Member Krajewski. It's difficult because we are small. It's difficult because we don't have a lot of staff. Our staff has been working nonstop. The demands from ISB that has been continued to be placed on us. We're recognized for doing good work, so that brings more people to us, as well. So again, I'm about being efficient and high quality. Those are the 2 things, and really trying to define quality. We try to measure it, as I said, through customer service. So it would be a big challenge, Member Pachowski, to really lose any staff members. That's where the bulk of our staff, and they're not. We're not talking about. We're talking about. The majority of our staff are paid between $30,000 and $50,000. And I'm very blessed to have staff that they could go work in a school district and make more money than they're making with me. These are a group of very dedicated, committed people that are willing to take phone calls on a Saturday night. When Member Renahan asked for a list of all of the low-income families, I had a member that just or employee that just did that over the weekend and wanted to be sure that we got whatever it was that was needed. So I understand, please, I understand as well as you do the challenges and the difficulty, but I'm asking for your consideration.
I just have a follow-up. I first met you when I was on the District 4 school board, and Hispanics in District 4 are probably 70-some%. Is there any special things you're doing for the Hispanic community, especially in District 1?
Yes, I work regularly with Fenton and Bensonville and that too. We're trying to support, especially in the area of providing meals and services. We're advocating with the federal government and trying to do things in that arena. You had talked about translators. one of the things that we don't have right now that is in my wish list is for a translator, particularly in this area, because it's not just about translating once. You have to so many people are in such an insecure place right now, especially many of our families who don't even know if they have food on the table that given day. So we want to make sure that we're over communicating. And so that's one area that we're certainly working in. Any question that comes to me about where can my families get, perhaps free healthcare service, we're working with them. We have an early childhood program with the most needy families in the county, which largely cover the Addison, the Bensonville, the Glendale Heights, the West Chicago areas. We're working with parents who have children from 0 to 3, going to food shelters, bringing them food. We're still delivering this, still helping them get their child ready, delivering books to these children. So we're trying to do, again, as much as we possibly can, and in all areas, but particularly in the most needed areas of this county.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions for Dr. Rossetti? All right, thank you very much, Dr. Rossetti. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Now we move right on to the DuPage County Sheriff's Office.
Well, thank you for having me on today. Been going through some challenges. It's been a tough year with COVID, all the demonstrations. We've run into a lot of real challenges, but take COVID in our correctional facility. We're still at 0. We had a scare over the weekend, had to test 16 people, all came back negative. We got those results today. So really scientifically, we've aced it in the jail so far. It's been really difficult. It's taken a whole lot of science applied every single day. Our contagion control teams, we had no idea how important they were going to be, having all your touch surfaces cleaned every single day. An incubation 4th floor has been a godsend to us. Also, with the protests, everything going on, I'm going to go through a few crime stats. Everything is really rising, really heavy. But with that being said, since I've been elected, we still have not had one citizen complaint of use of force against any of our people. We have only had one global use of force since I've been elected, and that was about a year ago in our correctional facility. And that person was immediately terminated for a use of force that we didn't agree with. And that's been it. So with those zeros, it's hard sometimes to articulate what you're not paying out. But when you look at institutions that do have COVID issues in their correctional facility, or they do have a lot of complaints from interaction with citizen, those are typically all lawsuits. That's a lot of money. If you get COVID in the correctional facility, it's really easy to blame the institution. So I'm sure Connor McCarthy will agree that it's probably nice not having stats in those columns that would cause you a great deal more work. So with that being said, I just want to go over a couple of highlights. First, our total calls for service. I'm going to go from January 1st up to Friday. It's just this past Friday, the 20th. We had 26,905 calls for service this time last year. We're up to 37,763. So that's 40% for just calls for service. I'm going to do this. This isn't the slides yet. We'll be starting the slide in just a second. Domestic trouble, 361 last year and 555, 54% increase. Post-crisis response team, where we're going to homes to help fix problems, whether they're drug-related, domestic-related, mental health-related. We did 115 last year at this time. We're up to 308. That's a 168% increase for them. Overdoses, 39 last year, 82 so far this year, 110% increase. Suicides, 6 and 20, 233% increase. Residential burglary, 22 last year, 47, 114% increase for this year. Burglary to motor vehicles still seems to soar as the highest increase, from 38 last year to 199 this year, 424% increase. Motor vehicle theft, the actual automobile being stolen, from 28 last year to 51 this year, 82% increase. And theft, 172. to 243 this year with a 41% increase. So just since 5/25, when the demonstration started, we have done 387 assists to other police departments who needed help during all that stuff going on. So before I do the slide, just a couple highlights. So you see there are going to be some spikes here and there within the budget. Our overall salary line requests are down $456,005 from FY20. That comes mostly from the elimination of 12 headcount from the radio room and the hiring of CSOs. Medical services, medical just goes up. It's hard to control. That's $413,000 for our corrections doctors. We have one that looks artificially inflated, the 53090 line. It's up 411%, but that's because the first contract for ACDC dispatch is on that line now, and that's $860,000. It did not appear before, but that's the first year contract with ACDC that offsets from those 12 headcount. Medical, dental, lab supplies includes jail medical and crime lab supplies. The crime lab is doing a lot of work. Again, with those crimes going up, there's a lot more evidence being processed. They just correlate with each other. Drugs and vaccines, that's $522,000. These are things that we just have no choice in. Instruction and schooling, there's an increase because we don't know the status reimbursement. Right now, the state is saying they may not reimburse all the academy costs that they used to pay for. So that might be a cost that we have to absorb. If we could start with the slideshow now, that was just extra. We crunch numbers to the very end. I mean, every day we had stats. So this is our budget presentation by me. If we could change to the next slide, please. That's basically the organization.
Flip the mic over towards you, if you would, Sheriff, so pick up better.
So is the sheriff, and then the Office of Professional Standards of Conduct reports directly to me. Then there's Under Sheriff Edmund Moore, Chief Anthony Romanelli, Chief Robert Torp. That's law enforcement, corrections, administrative, and support services. Those are the three defined bureaus. Administrative and support is also corrections, law enforcement. Current staffing levels: sworn deputy 393, civilian personnel 97, total personnel 490. We have multiple county units. Staffing levels are still 55 below 2009 and 2010 staffing numbers. So that's 55 positions that we've given up over I think the last 8 years. So that's the Administrative Bureau. It's with me at the top, Deputy Chief. We have ILEA, CTSB under there, Range, Budget Support, our Dispatch Center, Court Security, Crime Lab, Civil Division, IT, Accreditation, Grant Manager, Records, Training, Quartermaster, Grants, Lexipool, it's a liability system, Internship and Recruitment, Training, Scheduling, and Elias Lesso. Those are under Sheriff Moore's responsibilities. So if we go to the next slide. That's really it. Again, this is kind of more of just what it's about. The Civil Division, we do all the crisis intervention, de-escalation training, which has been just invaluable to us. Records, Court Security, Crime Lab, Budget Support, Community Resource Unit Training, Quartermaster, IT, Policy and Procedure, Grants, Recruiting, Diversity and Peer Support Programs. We just started a new one of those. Office Range Communication Center, and we have the only AHA training center in a police agency in DuPage County. Okay, this is corrections. It's pretty much the Deputy Chief, Chief Romanelli, and Deputy Chief. Support services, administrative services. We have a classification team that makes sure that the right people are being housed together to decrease any kind of fighting. Receiving discharge, booking, warrants, alternative sentencing, transports, swap, safety officers, just to DuPage rolls into corrections, facility maintenance, and then all the training and watch commanders. If we go to the next slide, please. So again, detainee capacity is 994. Approximate average daily population since COVID is 426. 100% COVID-free environment maintained. That has come with a lot of scares. We have had a lot of different testing. We got lucky. There must be a concurrent running flu because that's what everybody's testing positive is flu. Medical services we do. Full medical services, receiving discharge, fugitive, transport, warrants, work release, swap, Accountability Just, which is counseling, detox and recovery, psychological services, anger management programs. And it Takes a Village program, feeding the impoverished. We can go to the next slide, please. Law Enforcement Bureau. It's more simple. Its bureau chief is going to be Chief Robert Torp. He's got a deputy chief, and then we have detectives, patrol, forensics, and the digital forensics unit, which is, I mean, with technology, that's a skyrocketing new technology. If we could go to the next slide. So Patrol Division is responsible for unincorporated areas spread over 333 square miles, about 100,000 residents. We also have Township Deputy Programs, K9, Hazardous Device Unit, which is bomb unit, General Investigations, Task Force Special Assignments, Forensics, Digital Forensics. The total number of devices taken, again, we try to update our stuff constantly because the numbers keep jumping, is now over 800 devices that we've done. Post-crisis response team, again, it's one of those just, it correlates a lot to the overdose numbers. As those numbers jump up and domestic numbers jump up, their work increases more. If we go to the next slide, please. So these are some of the patrol calls for service. We already gave you that one. Crime scene process. We had 891 for the year. We're already at 631. Detective investigations are already at 1,368. These are numbers that are all eclipsing what we did last year. Crime lab cases, you know, car burglaries with the 600% increase. It's natural that when the agency does a swab on a steering wheel, that now we're going to get a whole bunch of those. We had to actually limit some of that. Civil papers were already at 10,000. Citations issued. That number has come down. You know, probably more limited traffic stop. It's mostly for investigatory and criminal related traffic stops these days. DUI arrests were at 54 so far this year. Again, citizen use of force complaints. I like to keep bringing that up because it's such a big thing out there now. Everyone wants to know, you know, how forceful are you? What's your complaint rate? We want to look over your internal affair files. And it's really nice to be able to say, I would have no work for anyone to do in those realms because we just don't have that. Can we go to the next slide, please? So these are accounting units breakdowns. It's AU 4400 for Sheriff's Administration, Radio Dispatch, Crime Lab, Court Security Corrections, Law Enforcement. Again, note that the AC 53090 Professional Services has that big increase, and that's the $863,000 for the AC/DC consolidation. Okay, so admin encompasses the Sheriff Command, Administration staff, our budget and support, diversity and peer support programs, IT, grant writing, recruit and internship, civil service, quartermaster. We'll go to the next slide, thank you. Increase in service training using in-house instructors in an effort to reduce costs for range. We also did joint purchasing with the Kane County Sheriff, Ron Hain, and bought our ammunition direct from Winchester to cut some costs there. We have Community Resource Unit, AHA Training Center, COVID Response Coordinator, office-wide PPE. All administrative functions of the Sheriff's Office. Go to the next slide. Dispatch, currently staff providing dispatch for the Sheriff's Office. At the request of research upon what we have with dispatch, we're currently in the process of consolidation of this service with AC/DC dispatch. Overall cost savings, particularly in the area of employee benefits, retirement, and elimination of approximately 14 headcount positions with the cost savings of FY21, which is $655,000. This agreement in place with AC/DC to test our telecommunicators and employ as many as possible. So AC/DC is saying that they'll take on the people who pass the test. So we're hoping to still have some of them helping with our dispatch services just from a different location. That red one is the one I already read. There we go. Okay, we are the contracted trainer for crisis intervention team training. De-escalation. We've been doing de-escalation for 4 years. We got in at the advent of it. I do believe it's a big reason why our complaint levels are so low. Our guys have really learned this. Not only have they learned it, but we are training the trainers. We have over 700 police officers that we've trained. That's about 40% of the global county of police officers. So, and we're continuing. We're doing this all the time. It was initially internally developed with the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board. It's the only other state certified CIT course taught that's not taught by the Illinois State Training Board. So we're permissioned through them, the only ones to do this training. Also, we're doing an additional program. It actually started early last week. It was last week that it started. It's basically CIT, but for diversity, where we're moving some of the, we're keeping de-escalation in. We're moving out some of the mental health aspects that CIT is trained to do and putting racial diversity with the de-escalation. So that is being received very well. It's a one of a kind. You know, we just wanted to really get ahead of the game. You know, it's not good enough that we have, you know, 0 uses of force, that we're not having these problems, but we want to go a meaningful step further in our training to show that we are listening, we are seeing what's going on out there, and we are changing what we do in response. Next slide, please. Crime lab, yeah, it's small. Testing and analysis of most municipalities in DuPage County. Controlled substances obviously is big. Well, you know, it's not limited to powders, tablets, liquid, plant material, residue, food products, e-cigarettes. The top 3 reported drugs in 2019, it's going to be cannabis sativa, heroin by itself, or mixed with fentanyl, and cocaine. Even, you know, people think that, you know, crime isn't, you know, here in DuPage. It is. We know of drug dealers that don't do business out in DuPage. We hear it on the overhears that they want to meet in other towns where there's going to be lighter sentencing. So with that being said, though, we followed one from a deal in Cook County recently into a place at Lyle, to where they lived, and recovered, I think it was a quarter kilo of cocaine and 5 handguns. So those crimes will be prosecuted here in DuPage, whether they do business out here or not. If they live out here, we're looking too. So anyway, drug-induced homicide pilot program. We're starting to look more into deaths that are from drug overdoses, looking for drug dealers to charge them with drug-induced homicide. First Step program, latent prints, that's a big one for us. Visual, photographic, chemical processing techniques, comparison of known standards, automated biometric identification system, search of Illinois State Police databases, next generation identification. And there we go. Forensic biology and DNA, we do body fluid identifications, all sex assault evidence kits. Again, property crimes are up so high, it's causing real taxation for consumables and manpower for property crimes, burglaries, auto theft, violent crimes, and DNA analysis is just spiking massively. Relationship paternity testing for criminal cases, combined DNA index system. Next slide, please. Court Security Division, responsible for care and physical security over there in the courthouse, the annex building, the field courts. The duties include entry of screening of all people who enter the facilities, security and maintenance of order in all courtrooms and public areas, response to threats, physical and medical emergencies, any requests for assistance, arrest or detain offenders required or directed by the courts, liaison with chief judge, state's attorney, public defender, clerk's office, and private attorneys. Training and preparation for any all incidents that may occur. Next slide, please. Okay, currently operating on a daily basis with an average 11 courtrooms not having a deputy or court screening officer assigned due to because of decreased staffing. That's actually a constitutional obligation too, to have all courtrooms attended. We just have not been able to achieve that with our manpower, so that's a calculated risk. Staffing requirements at field courts have tripled due to scanning entrance for occupant and safety. When we first came in, we had to talk to the chief judge, and I mean, we're basically at a VFW in Downers Grove, and there were security concerns, and we had to have magnetometer. Magnetometer takes more people to work, so that's kind of jacked us up a little bit in the court area with the courthouses. Elimination of costly staffing on afternoon shifts. So again, you have to understand that there's cuts, and then there's also annualized savings in perpetuity that will increase with attrition. You know, truth be told, a lot of people don't wish to be the police anymore. So people who can get out of the job are retiring. So our attrition rate is starting to spike. We're seeing a lot more people with interest to retire, which means all these changes we're making are going to actually benefit the county annually every year in perpetuity to greater numbers. So like, you know, we're short more than the 11 staff, but we got 5 by eliminating a second watch in the courthouse. So that was where you had 4 deputies and a sergeant, and they were getting large amounts of overtime because they're the only ones who could be called in to help supplement day shift. So it killed that whole overtime. It killed the staffing on that shift, brought them back into manpower in the courtroom or in the courthouse. So it saved us 5 deputies that we needed and couldn't get. And it also stopped all that overtime. So it's going to be a cost savings in perpetuity. Next slide, please. Correctional Center. We do classifications again, determine detainee housing based on gender, offense, psychological med needs, security concerns. We have a CERT, that's Correctional Emergency Response Team, responds to all critical incidents in the facility. We have a gang unit in there. Again, our detainee capacity is 994. COVID number right now is 426. We depopulated, reduced possibility of spread with release of non-violent offenders. Our 4th floor is still vacated as an incubation isolation area for 15-day observation period. You know, and we've had 4 people COVID positive sent to us. We are so stringent that those 4, we tested immediately and kept them out of even the 4th floor into a negative pressure cell that we have just for these incidents. We test them, they come up positive. We wouldn't let them into the correctional facility until it tested negative. Once they tested negative, then they go to the 4th floor for the 15-day incubation period. That's all. We have put in every possible barrier to stop COVID in our correctional facility. If we go to the next slide, please. We provide quality, accessible medical, dental, mental health services to all detainees at the DuPage County Correctional Center. They receive a physical within 14 days, nurse for sick calls. When someone's sick, as soon as you say the word sick, you basically like a tree, you have roots. We hold you in place right there. All the people come in with PPEs, we PPE that person, you go right into a negative pressure cell. So we're that, and then the contagion team comes and cleans behind that person, disinfects the cell, and cleans all the way to the new environment. So we're really on top of that. We do lab testing, doctor clinics, medication administration, mental health evaluations. Next slide, please. Receiving discharge, response for all detainee processing, intake and release. There's 9,320 total detainees processed in 2019. So far, there's 2,898 through 2020. That's a little low. That's because of the COVID restrictions. Fugitive Transport Warrants Division. It's all warrants issued by the court. There are 11,251 in 2019. So far, we're at 7,228. It seems like we're pretty much on par to be about the same. Responsible for all countywide detainee transportation outside the correctional facility. That's courts, writs, offside medical visits, etc. We do extraditions throughout the whole country. That's for like major crimes, you know, murders. I think we just got a murderer from Maricopa County. That's where one of our COVID positives came from that we tested and did not let them into our facility, and that person's clean. We support all local agencies with detainee transportation. Everybody in the county, all the police agencies bring their transports here. Next slide, please. SWAP. There we go. Sheriff's Work Alternative Program. It's in lieu of incarceration. Just massive services to DuPage County communities. Saves a ton of money, everything from cleanup to painting to moving chairs. I know our good friend Kay McKean from Scarce moved their facility from Downers Grove to Addison. That was SWAP that did all the moving. We do that for a lot of different places. Let's see, work release, another alternative, full-time incarceration, treatment services, reduces budgetary burden on office. Next slide, please. Training, all deputies are required to receive a minimum of 40 hours annual training, mental health training, use of force, de-escalation. I can't underline de-escalation enough. That's a really big one. Emergency response, first aid CPR. Accreditation, it's from the American Correctional Association. We actually got a 100% compliance for all mandatory and non-mandatory standards. So you know, that's like thousands of little things to do. And it was 100% on an off-site, or I should say an on-site, outside company accreditation process. PREA, Train in Prison Rape Elimination Act, fully compliant. Medical accreditation, fully compliant. Next slide, please. Just of DuPage, nonprofit organization providing social services to detainees, vocational programs. We've done custodial, which I think has really made a difference with COVID. Welding, Hope's Garden. We've already done one delivery to the Wheaton Food Pantry from Hope's Garden. We're thinking approximately we're going to get 1,500 pounds of food for food pantries this year. It also is very therapeutic for people in drug recovery, and our female inmates have been working a lot in there, and I've been talking to them. It's going exceptionally well. We also do spiritual enrichment, addiction recovery, education, life skills, and we started reentry to where we're making sure the environments that people are going back into, they have a chance to survive there, that they're not going back into the same old thing, the same old place. And that helps us with recidivism. It's kind of like PCRT. It's very simple, similar to the post-crisis response team, where we're going out to people saying, hey, we know there's a problem here. How can we help you when you're in a non-emergency environment instead of, it's 911 time. So go to the next slide, please. So medication assisted treatment is really also helping with a lot of different things. Detox programs and initiatives, drug recovery, Vivitrol. We're looking and researching buprenorphine right now. That is called, I think, Sublocade. It's an opioid addiction. It's like an agonist and an antagonist is what I was told is the formula, which is somewhere in between Vivitrol and Suboxone. So we're trying to, that helps with withdrawal also. So we're getting more into this field where we can offer more different varieties of help, because we get about 80% of our people come in addicted to something, whether it's alcohol or drugs. So obviously it's a massive problem. We don't focus on this, and it's not like it's 10%. No, it's 80%. So most of our population, we're dealing with these issues. If we go to the next slide, please. Law Enforcement Bureau, primary response to any civil criminal complaints for over 100,000 residents, criminal investigations, follow-up, crime scene processing, evidence collection, all of our cases, so it's all DPSL cases in most cases for municipalities within the county. Merit activations for major crimes, and it's a busy weekend for Merit this weekend in Glendale Heights, Lombard, and Wheaton. Large-scale incidents, major auto accident and arson investigations, digital forensics unit. Again, I cannot tell you how important that this unit is. So what we did get, we had a large headcount request, I know, last budget, and I think we got 2 people is what we ended up getting. We understand that that's what happens when COVID hit and all that. But one of the 2 people that we we put into this digital forensics unit. So far this year, we've gotten 12 sex offenders and child pornography arrests. I mean, that's so far. And we just didn't, we would have had more this year, but with COVID, it was really hard to, engage in a lot of these things. But look out on the internet and these apps, it's apps that we're mostly dealing with. There's a really high amount of sex offenders. The phone is where you get all the stuff, and any crime. I mean, whether it's your location, GPS positioning, whether it's data, text back and forth, pictures, pornography. Digital forensic is a rising field within law enforcement. It is science. Science and technology is where everything's going now. Next slide, please. Law enforcement, again, increased canine unit. I want to just remind you the 4 narcotic and cadaver dogs that we got were donated with $100,000 of outside money. That unit's been doing great. The dog just helps so much with manpower. We have the only bomb squad, the hazardous device and explosive unit in the county. We provide aid to any requesting entity through mutual aid or requests or alias, and again, or merit. Most of the state training mandates are unfunded. And just, again, to remind you, so far this last year and this year, we've not come for any additional appropriations. We've all worked within our budget, both years. Next slide, please. Required state mandates. We have to train in civil rights, use of force, constitutional use of law enforcement authority, cultural competency, human rights, legal updates, procedural justice, sex assault, trauma, informed response. You don't keep accreditations and all that kind of stuff if you don't do all your training. All members actively serving in the Law Enforcement Bureau are in compliance with all active state mandates. 2 new mandates in process: officer wellness and reporting of child abuse and neglect. With Lexapool is our new it's an accreditation-like system, but it's heavily involved in liability. That's what everybody is starting to turn to, because like this, it's brand new stuff, gets updated instantly. So you're up with the highest and newest standards. Next slide, please. Merit concept. This started August 1st of last year. So we've had a birthday with Merit now. And I truly believe if Merit wasn't in place, the handling of all the demonstrations would not have gone so well. Merit was created to provide a single, highly skilled, effective, efficient, and collaborative countywide law enforcement task force for the expressed mutual benefit of every community within DuPage County. So they train together, they work together. Gone are the days of us different areas running less efficiently and showing up saying, how do you do this? How do you do that? No, we train together, we use the same equipment, we respond together now. So it's really increased the efficiency of our whole law enforcement matrix in DuPage County. Next slide, please. This is a merit organizational chart. It's member agencies, executive board, merit coordinator. And you see how many different franchises. This is just like running a small police department. It's got all your crisis negotiators, SWAT teams, canines they have access to. Pretty much any emergency, even forensics, digital forensics, everything's available to merit because this is what keeps our county, whole tapestry of law enforcement safe. This is how we respond together. Next slide, please. Operational components: SWAT, major crimes, forcible felonies, public integrity, major crimes, crash reconstructionists. Major kind of fatal accidents seem to be one of the biggest spiking things that we have endured since merit. There are fatal accidents, very large amount. Crime scene, digital forensics, crisis negotiations, canine response, incident management, assistance team, planned events. The consolidation of agencies provided essential law enforcement services throughout a variety of critical situations during this year, 2020. Next slide, please. So again, incredibly busy year with COVID, civil unrest, demonstrations, resulting in a lot of what we considered imperative changes. Scenarios to review that have impacted sheriff's office and county, look at some of the correctional center initiatives that are continuing to work. New canine members, comfort dog. That comfort dog also did not cost anything. Search and rescue and narcotics. Next slide. Again, there's just a couple shots from Hope's Garden. It really is generating a lot of food. It helps in not only keeping things calm, it's something the female inmates have been really highly participating in. It's working out very well. Next slide, please. Just helping out during COVID. So we have had citizens, a lot of citizen groups, business groups, religious institutions really step up and bring us supplies, PPEs, food. In turn, we embrace that concept, and we, for 4 months, have been doing It Takes a Village program where we're getting excess food from food providers. And, instead of having a sheriff's SWAT van roll up with, guys coming out to run to a house for a call for service, you're seeing vans roll up into these neighborhoods and supply hot meals and food. So we've been doing this with a lot of different areas. It's working really great. Right now we're doing a big program with Meals on Wheels right here in the county parking lot. I think we have our third one of those on September 12th, and that is feeding our elderly community. So the It Takes a Village program has just been a great way for us to really meld with our community in a positive way. And get to know a lot of people and get food to a lot of the people who really need it. Next slide, please. There's our new canine partners. That's all our dogs. You can see we do a lot of things with them. Therapy dog, comfort dogs. We bring them to the jail through our employees. Obviously, we can do narcotics, cadaver for any dead material, tracking bloodhounds for tracking people. That one down the bottom with the really long ears could track people for many, many miles away. The canines are just a great support function for the sheriff's office. Next slide, please. Okay, like I said, I always want to be able to tell you where you're going to save money, how are you going to, there's not only cutting, but there's saving, and there's saving in perpetuity. And you definitely want annualized cost savings where you're going to see things get bigger every year. So again, court security, when you're bringing over people who are very higher paid 70 plus from a correctional environment, and then they come with full benefits to a courthouse environment, it's an expensive employee on day one. And then it creates a lot of overtime because those packed benefits basically clog all the vacation calendars, and then it's time off and people selling back time and all that kind of stuff. So we went to a starting pay of $38,000. And believe it or not, it's working very well. We're getting some more young people interested. And we're not paying that exorbitant money. So again, every year we attrition more people out. That savings can get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's in perpetuity. And again, anybody who can leave is leaving our profession right now. I'm telling you, it's a hard time that we're dealing with out there. You know, we're doing our jobs, but I can tell that the police culture is trying to adapt to some of this stuff that's occurring in other areas. So we're also researching a charging process for crime lab services for certain offenses. What we've noticed is just particularly like car burglaries. They're very expensive, and you know, you could be asking for a whole lot. At first, a lot of these police departments are asking for multiple, maybe 5 or 10 swabs of different areas, and we had to limit their amount of swabs. That's a disposable on how we take DNA samples and analyze for a person to see if you're in the database. So we're looking, we may have to start charging at least just for the consumables. We have to be careful though. We can't make any kind of profit that can affect the grants, and we're very much survive on grants in the crime lab. So you can't have a threshold of earning money or it affects your grant capability. So we're balancing that, but we are trying to come up with just to cover costs. So consolidation of the Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center with Addison Consolidated Dispatch Center, resulting in a headcount reduction of approximately 14, FY21 cost savings of $655,000. We also I guess we've kind of learned that this is the norm, that when we can delay between hiring, even if it's just a couple months, we hold off vacancy until it starts to hurt us, basically. Because that creates a couple months of not utilizing that person's salary. So when we have a spike in overtime or something like that, it gives us somewhere to draw on. So we're not coming to you guys saying we need more money. We handle all this internally. Elimination of the afternoon shift, I discussed that. Routine research and application for grant opportunities. We're constantly scouring for grants. We have a grant team where every dollar that we can get, we're getting. We're also reassessed and just implemented an increase in civil process fines and fees. I think we had permission to raise these back in 2010 and just didn't follow up on it for some reason. So we got that fixed, and that'll be higher fines and fees. Next slide, please. So the two requested totals, FY 2020 authorizes 46,105,124. Requested 2021 is 47,036,351. This even has all of the arbitrator award contract totals increases all baked in. So this has every contractual increase for the entire year already in. So many of these expenses, a lot of stuff that's still in the budget now are stuff we believe we're going to get reimbursed by CARES money, but the process still has to finish. And the increase largely due is grant guaranteed increases for collective bargaining. Obviously, that's a big increase. We did not understand how desperately we were going to need a lot of PPE stuff in the beginning when COVID hit, and we had 500 people. Our first shipment at first when we got our PPEs from county was 40 masks. So we had to right away, find these things other places. So we did a lot of self-purchasing of PPEs. That was the only way we were going to have stuff we needed as quick as we had it. So also like body armor, tasers, AEDs used to come out of tort liability, but that doesn't now. So we're paying for those our own and technology related costs. The one thing with technology, it doesn't get cheaper. There's no way for me to drive the tech costs down. There's no way to do it. But again, implemented personnel changes, because that's where our largest portion of our budget is personnel, saves money in perpetuity through employee attrition, and every year you're going to gain more. So these aren't just savings that you're going to get this year. Every year you gain on this reorganization. Next slide, please. Open invitation. Any board member at any time. We could do ride-alongs, patrol, tour any area of the sheriff's office. We are completely transparent. And I'd like you to completely, fully know and understand our operation, duties, and responsibilities. So you are all welcome to tour any portion of our operation. Next slide, please. And thank you for your attention and consideration. Be happy to take any questions.
All right, Member Zay, then Member Chalsky to start out.
Well, thank you, Sheriff Mendrick. I know you've had many challenges this year, but I do have to say your willingness to work with us here and your staff, a lot of people get elected and talk about what they're going to do, and you have really produced. You've made fundamental changes over the sheriff's office, and I can't thank you enough. I've been here a long time, and you have the biggest budget and always been the target. And I'm just thinking that, when we talk about reductions and things, your office, the sheriff's office, has borne a lot of that over the years, as we can see through head count and all that. I think it's time other departments in the county step up, because I think we're seeing warning signs coming. We hear from the state's attorney this weekend. We had 2, violent armed robberies in, Wheaton and Lombard. And I think if we don't see these warning signs coming with felonies up and what's going on to the east, that we can no longer cut law enforcement in this county, because we're seeing what's happening. So again, I want to thank you. And I think we see what you do, everything you've done. So there's a lot of trust there that I know if we do not cut you and give you more, that you're going to produce for us and protect our citizens. So again, thank you, and thank you to your staff. You guys are always available for questions when things are, when we had the riots going on, you guys were available, talking nonstop on things. So again, thank you. And again, I think when we talk about cutting, I think you guys have cut, when you talk about cutting fat and cutting everything else, we've cut bones and limbs and everything else. And I think we have to stop doing that with our sheriff's department.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. And yes, you're right. There is a very large spike in crime activity just from the stats that we have.
Member Pachowski.
I just want to thank you for openness and transparency, because previous budgets were not that way. We didn't know where the money was going. If we made a request, it was rejected. So thank you for doing that. I've gotten, like everybody else, lots of emails about not defunding police. We have no COVID-19. We have no use of force, and we're getting crisis intervention and de-escalation training. So again, look at all of that. Look at what happened at One Magnificent Mile downtown. They didn't touch Oak Brook. So thank you and your staff for everything, and we will keep DuPage a safe place to live.
Thank you.
Member DeCiani, then Member Desart.
Thank you, Sheriff. I agree with your budget. I think you've made some great cuts between telecommuters and working the court security issues out. You've stepped up in the toughest times, and we've worked together on many of those issues. You protected my district extremely well, Oak Brook, Elmhurst, again, against a lot of odds. So, and unfortunately, the crime that was committed over the weekend was in my district in Lombard, and got a resident shot. We know violent crime is up. We hear it, and we need to step up for you and make sure you have all the tools to do your job. So we appreciate your service, and you have my support.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Member Desart.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief because I know that we're already a half hour late for a county board meeting. But Sheriff Mendrick, I just wanted to pipe in and say, in this year, 2020, your department is to be commended. You've been nimble, you've been fluid, you've had to take on all of these things, COVID, and then the civil unrest, and you and your department have just done an excellent job, especially in this most difficult year that we've ever seen. So thank you so much for your service, and thank your staff too.
Thank you so much.
Member Elliott.
I will be brief as well, because I know we're late, but I just wanted to highlight something that I experienced last week. We talk about the crime and law enforcement aspect of this, and we understand the challenges that your department's going through. But I attended a community meeting in Lombard last week, and I was so impressed by the fact that everyone in that community knew your outreach officers, knew them by name, told me that they had been responsive, that they got back to them quickly. I talked to you later that evening, and between the time I called you and the time you called me back, which was probably 15 minutes, you had already received a full briefing from your people who knew everything about that neighborhood. And that just strikes me as a department that's really at the top of its game. So thank you to you and your folks over there.
Thank you.
Member Colbert.
Thank you, Sheriff Mendrick, for all your support for the community. We've worked on many issues, and I'm just so proud of this de-escalation training and the diversity inclusion training that's happening. And you're so prompt with your responses if we have any questions or concerns or anything. And I definitely agree with your budget. You need it. You need the funds, especially with what's going on right now with high crime rates. And thank you so much for not having a single COVID case. That is really, truly impressive. So I just want to commend you guys, your staff, everybody there, the entire police department. So entire sheriff's department. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Member Eckhoff, and then Member Gajewski.
Yeah, I also wanted to add my voice and saying thank you for all the hard work you and your staff do. You've been great to work with in the last year, and we really appreciate all your efforts to reduce and keep down costs. The chief judge had indicated that he's would like to institute a Zoom program. I think I talked to you a little bit about that, but it's my understanding the Zoom program for the defendants in the jail would assist in keeping the COVID-19 down to zero by not transporting them in between the courthouse and interacting with other people. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Anytime that you can limit movement, you reduce the chance of a spread of virus. So yeah, anytime we can keep people in place and do things electronically, it's definitely a help.
And then there's also been outbreaks of COVID-19 at other jails, other counties. So instituting a Zoom program now will prepare us in the event that did occur in our jail.
Correct. Yeah, we're right now, Kane County's experienced an outbreak, and we are assisting them taking no one with symptoms. Obviously, I'm not going to take anybody's symptomatic inmates, but we're taking a rolling 20 new people that they're getting, so they don't have to introduce new non-COVID people while they're dealing with this. So we're actually assisting Kane County with that right now.
Well, thank you.
Member Krajewski.
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff. And again, you've done a great job. My concern is, going forward, if you can, you need resources to help with the high increase in crime. I've had a few carjackings down in my district. The car thefts have been up. I think, it's got to be kind of a group approach between you and the chiefs and the municipalities, because you represent the unincorporated areas. I know different municipalities, I've heard have taken an approach of a non-pursuit, which has kind of gotten out to the people outside of DuPage that are coming in doing these carjackings. Just recently, we had the one in Westmont on Cass and Ogden, which concerned a lot of the Clarendon Hills constituents in my district regarding the crime. I did run into 2 nights ago at the park, former police chief over in Hinsdale, Brad Bloom, who I think is maybe a public safety director now. He said they just put on a little Zoom seminar. I think it was earlier last week that they anticipated it was about crime in the area in Hinsdale, and they anticipated about 35 people on the call they had, or on the Zoom meeting. They had 530 something, I think it was the number. It was, if I quoted them correctly, but it was unexpected. But it is a concern in my district and probably everywhere else. But I think, it's going to take from you as you ran the protests that we're going through in coordination with the police chiefs. But I think you may need more resources to work with the local chiefs on how we're going to combat that, because it's starting to be a concern among a lot of constituents, at least in my district, especially in Hinsdale and Clarendon Hills just recently with, what transpired. And, I saw the judge the other day rule to try the one that carjacked in Downers Grove and Warrenville as an adult. But that was another one that was in my district. And, I'm glad that, they're filing charges to try to send a message, but, we got to do something, and you may need resources to combat that.
Yeah, and you are right. We are working with the DuPage County Police Chiefs Association right now. Merit has brought us a lot closer together, but we also have that organization that we work together, and we are trying to come up with some combined strategies. The advantage of being county is we see a global map, and we can better identify trends. If you're within a town, you may not see what's in Bartlett from Naperville, what's from Naperville to Willowbrook or to Addison. They're too far apart geographically, but we look at and that's what helped with the protests. We're able to see a global view of how things are patterning.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing and hearing none, Sheriff, on behalf of the entire board, thank you for the work you do. I'd like to say and commend my colleagues for the work that we do here as a county board. I think this is how government is done right. And boy, is the way you do your job in law enforcement done right.
Thank you.
I really believe that if every law enforcement agency in the country held themselves to the standards that we do here in DuPage, you wouldn't see the tragedies that we saw in Minneapolis and Seattle and Chicago and elsewhere. So thank you for being proactive rather than reactive, and for being so open.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, believe it or not, that is the last of our budget presentations for the day. I'll move on to, now keep in mind, because we don't have a physical quorum, we are going to have roll call votes on everything. So when we get to the various matters, to the extent possible, we can combine and approve. We'll start with entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Tuesday, August 11, 2020 meeting. We have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Elliott,
Aye.
Member Hart,
Aye.
Member Healy, Member Krajewski,
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Noonan. Member Ozog,
Aye.
Member Kowalski, Member Renahan.
Aye.
Rutledge. What's going on? Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I don't know if what I'm about to propose is procedurally proper, but I would like to float it out there.
Let's
We're
finish
now for,
this first, and then I'll entertain your talk. Go ahead, finish the roll call.
oh, I thought we were done. I'm sorry.
Oh, Member Selman,
Aye.
Member Tornatori,
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin,
Aye.
Member Covert,
Aye.
Member Dessart.
Aye.
Okay, all ayes, the minutes are approved. Member Elliott, you had a
I apologize. I thought we were done. I didn't hear. Given that we're 40 minutes late for our scheduled 10 o'clock meeting, would it make any sense to discharge the Finance Committee and simply take these up? Because I believe almost everything on this agenda, if not everything, is going to be before us for a roll call vote at the next meeting.
I don't have a problem with that. I'll stick to. Okay, being advised by the State Attorney's Office that we should procedurally go through these, but if we can combine and approve them expeditiously, and then if people have individual questions, they can send them for the county board meeting. I think we can move through these pretty quickly. So with that, budget transfers.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I move on FIR 47420 budget transfer.
We have a motion and a second on this item. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Roll call.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Member Chaplin. Member Covert,
Aye.
Member Dessart,
Aye.
Member DeCiani, Member Eckhoff, Member Elliott,
Aye.
Member Hart,
Aye.
Member Healy, Member Krajewski,
Aye. Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozog,
Aye.
Member Pachalski, Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge.
Just, yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, we'll get you.
Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Okay, all eyes under procurement requisitions, finance.
Mr. Chair, move on 2020-225, contract used with Signal 88 for Elmhurst Quarry Security.
We have motion and second. Any discussion on this item? Seeing and hearing none, roll call.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Dessart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski.
Aye.
Member
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Noonan. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachalski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
All eyes, it's approved. Economic Development, Chairman Elliott.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of EDCO 2120 awarding resolution to AT&T Government Education Healthcare Solutions in the amount of $32,000.
We have motion and second on this item. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor. I'm sorry, roll call.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachalski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
He said
Aye.
Okay. Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Dessart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff.
right, all ayes, that's approved. On to Health and Human Services, Chairman Tornatori.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to combine and approve items C1 through 4. These are all contracts for software and related items to the care center.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on these items. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Member Kajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
All right, all ayes, those are approved. On to Judicial and Public Safety, Chairman Eckhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a slight correction to our discussion regarding the Administrative Order 2036 before the Chief Judge comes before us next week for his budget presentation. Just so you know, the order is not mandatory. Inmates are still brought over to the courthouse at 11 and 1:30, but the Zoom program that he's proposing, as the sheriff said, would be beneficial to both the sheriff's office and the jail system. And the Chief Judge did send out that order to all of us about a week ago. I would move approval of JPS agenda items 1 through 4, combine and approve.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to combine and approve those 4 items under JPS. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Eckhoff.
Aye.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy.
Aye.
Member Kajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Covert.
Aye.
Third.
Aye.
Member DeCiani.
Okay, all ayes, those are approved. Thank you. On to Legislative, Chairman Elliott.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to combine and approve items 1, 2, and 3 under Section E on the agenda. These are all contracts for lobbying services and government consulting services, both in Springfield and Washington, D.C.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to combine and approve those items. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Aye. Member Kajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Aye. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Pachowski. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. All ayes, those are works. Chairman Healy. We have a motion and a second to combine and approve those 3 items. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Healy.
Aye.
Member Kajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Aye. Member Ozog.
Aye.
Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Hart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
At all ayes, those are approved. On to technology, Chairman Hart, and I understand technology, I believe, this morning. So those are not contingent upon parent committee final approval, is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move on TEP 227-20, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to SHI International Corps. I do want to mention that there was a typo in the period of performance in this blurb. It should read November 10th, 2020 through November 9th, 2021.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on this item. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, roll call.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Kajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan.
Aye.
Member Ozog.
Aye.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Okay, all ayes, it's approved. Thank you very much. On to transportation, Chairman Pachowski.
Move change order DTP 161A-20, an amendment to a resolution of Christopher D. Burke Engineering Limited.
We have a motion and a second on this item. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all roll call.
Member Pachowski.
Aye.
Member Renahan. Member Rutledge.
Aye.
Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
Member Zay. Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski. Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozak.
Aye.
All ayes, those are approved on the finance resolutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to combine and approve items A through N. These are acceptance appropriations and COVID-related expenses.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to combine agenda items A through N under finance resolutions. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski.
Aye.
Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozak.
Aye.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
All ayes, those are approved on information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Place on file A, payment of claims, B, wire transfers, C, grant proposal and appropriations.
Motion and second to receive and place on file those items. Any discussion as to any of them? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Zay.
Aye.
Member Chaplin.
Aye.
Member Covert.
Aye.
Member Desart.
Aye.
Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Elliott.
Aye.
Member Hart.
No, we didn't get member Elliott, so back.
I don't think I was audible. Aye.
Okay. Member Hart.
Aye.
Member Healy. Member Krajewski. Member Larson.
Aye.
Member Noonan. Member Ozak.
Aye.
Member Pachowski. Member Renahan.
Aye.
Member Rutledge. Aye. Member Selman.
Aye.
Member Tornatori.
Aye.
All ayes, those are approved. Thank you. Received and placed on file. Do we have any old business? Do we have any new business? Seeing nothing more without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.